The world feels charted, yet the most troubling spots are those we can locate on an actual map and still not grasp. Trenches so profound, the sea becomes a smashing emptiness. And still, odd noises drift up from the blackness like something aware. Towns carved downward into rock, large enough to conceal multitudes, with no plain record of who started them or what they were escaping. Shrines with strong rooms, sealed not by locks, but by ceremony. Gates no person dares to open because the caution is older than the riches beyond it. Cascades that gulp down half a stream and won't give it back. Woods so immense they remove direction, where tales of vanishings and unreal beasts stick to the treetops like fog. Caverns shut for eons with air you cannot inhale, and beings that ought not to be, yet are. And under frost, under soil, under all things known are buried pools, lost mazes, and still halls that make the globe overhead seem like the outer layer of something far grander. These are not fables. They are not stories meant for fun. They are actual spots measured, recorded, examined, and yet they stay unsolved. So get cozy, because where we head, the edge between study and the unexplained begins to blur. And the farther we go, the more it seems the Earth is holding back truths on design. Let us start. There are spots on this planet where the chart quits seeming like a vow and begins seeming like a dare. Not because the lines vanish, but because the sense of those lines falls apart. Peaks can be gauged, wastelands can be crossed, even the polar frost can be trailed and guessed, at least in thought. But there is one sort of ground that pushes back against the human need to label and own it. A ground built not of stone and wind, but of water so deep it acts like a separate sphere. Out in the western Pacific, east of the Philippines and south of Japan, the ocean floor drops into a gash so extended and so slim that first sea scholars could only term it a trench, as if the orb itself had been cut by a blade. The Mariana Trench, a rift that sinks past the touch of light, past the touch of most gear, past the touch of the yarns we spin about where being can and cannot hold on. It is simple to state the Mariana Trench is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. That contrast is correct, and it is well known because it sounds tidy, like a truth you can cup in your hand. Just a fast memo before we proceed. The images in this film are gentle by plan. These yarns took a while to dig up and even more to relate, correct? So if you would rather only hear, that is wholly okay. Let it run in the rear or nestle in and let your thoughts roam. Either path, the riddle lingers. Let us proceed. But it does not hold the sense of what that deepness does to fact. Down there the sea is not water in any known sense. Beneath that force, water grows weightier, thicker, almost beyond grasp forceful. Each inch of a craft's shell is squeezed by tons of burden. A tiny crack becomes a deadly one. A stray shake becomes a caution. A small split is not a split, it is a ticking clock. The trench belongs to the Hadal zone, termed for Hades, the nether realm. It is a proper label. Not because it is blazing or fabled, but because it is a kingdom where the normal laws, glow, heat, top weather, human feel, quit working. The chill stays near icy. The blackness is total. And still, even there, the deep does not feel bare because the trench is not hushed. We tend to picture the abyssal sea as a blank, a realm where naught stirs and naught utters. But in water, noise is not a tiny trait. Noise is the tongue of span. It moves farther and swifter under the surface than in air, sliding through sheets of heat and weight like a note sent along unseen halls. And in the Mariana area, the sea's sound view is tangled by land shape. The trench's sheer sides, the stacked thickness of the water pillar, the steady tiny shifts of rock plates gnashing together at the border where Earth is actively being retold. Ages before people ever viewed the trench base, they could catch proof that some act was unfolding down there. Hydrophones, sea mics, turned into our ears in a spot our sight could not gain. They were set out for study, for steering, for martial listening, for quake tracking, and at times for aims never quite made plain to folks just to hear. When you listen long enough, you find the sea is never fully still. There is the far grumble of gales sent through swells and weight moves. There is the snap of ice and the fizz of wee bubbles popping. There is the endless deep hum of ship trade, a people-made haze that now floats even into far basins. There are land shakes too, soft at first, then harsh and plain, like one hitting a gong someplace past view. But in the Mariana Trench area, certain sounds arose that did not slot neatly into any known box. Sounds that were spooky, not because they were ghostly, but because they were exact-shaped, nearly full of voice. And among them, one record grew famed for the plain cause that it sounded like naught else. In 2014, searchers using a hydrophone group caught a weird call in the Western Pacific that started as a deep-drawn moan and then pulled taut into something steely, a springy, twanging, nearly buzzing strain that lifted and fell like a giant chord being strummed in the black. It did not sound like a whale chant, though it held that same feel of bulk. It did not sound like ice, though it had that crisp pull. It did not sound like a land shake, though it seemed to have heft behind it. It sounded oddly like a huge living machine. They termed it the Western Pacific Biotwang, a tag, but a true one, because the noise felt both alive and built at once, as if the sea was making a mark that belonged to two spheres, one that grew and one that was put together. If you picture the Mariana Trench as a bottomless gorge, the Biotwang seems like a bounce that should not be able to be. A sound that appears too planned for rock study, too odd for known life, and too removed from the top for anything we normally tie to human craft. The first urge, plainly, was to hunt the plainest reply, a known beast acting in a new way. The deep sea is packed with beasts that wield sound. Whales, naturally, mostly baleen whales, can make mighty deep calls that journey over whole ocean basins. Their tones can curve around land masses, bend through water sheets, and land on far hydrophones as eerie bent shards. Certain whales also yield tonal notes that can seem mechanic when sieved through span and jumble. If a whale's note is partly blocked by seafloor curves or stretched by heat layers, it can turn into something odd. But the Biotwang's feel was strange. It had that bouncy pull in the core of the sound, a trait that made it feel like a stretched frame, snapping back to spot. Some searchers said it could be a note from a bride's wail or another sort whose sounds were not as fully listed as the more famed blue and humpback wails. Others put forth that the call could be a blend, a life sound layered with place echo, like a tone played through the frame of a giant tool. And then there was another chance, softer but more jarring, that the sound was not the cry of a beast at all, but the noise of a beast dealing with another thing. For in the deep, even a plain deed can turn foreign. A beast moving its jaw, snapping a special limb, shaking flesh at weight extremes. These could build noise results we do not catch in thin water. The Hadal zone shifts what stuff does. It shifts how frames act. It shifts how sound bears. It shifts, to say it plain, the music of being. Yet life was not the sole reason that made sense. Landscape in the Mariana area is always astir. The trench is there because one rock slab is being pushed under another, a slow, steady deed named subduction. This makes land shakes, deep splits, and the soft groan of stone under load. It makes sea slides too. Huge mud falls that can roar like storm through the deep and then die, leaving only the ghost of shake. If you have ever heard a ship's frame creak at sea, you have heard a wee top copy of what load can sound like. Now grow that to the size of a rock edge. Picture the trench walls piled with layers of dirt, shifting by inches, loosing pull built over seasons. Picture a sea slope giving way, a mud stream sliding quietly through black, making a deep wave that lifts, crests, and twangs as the bulk catches and lets go. Some experts guess that the Biotwang could be the sound mark of a land event, a slide, a split, a moving border sieved through the tricky form of the seafloor and the piled weight of the sea atop it. The trench in this view is not a dead mark, but a humming form that can make sounds that copy life. And if the trench can sing in its own way, then maybe the Biotwang was no strange beast at all, but a clue that the earth itself is a tool of sound. Yet even that answer left awkward holes. Land sounds can be wide, rolling, steady. The Biotwang felt more like a wave than a rumble, like some deed done, like a sign. And once you let yourself ponder in terms of signs, the mind of course floats toward the other large shade that looms over deep sea hearing, human mark. For the Mariana Trench is far, but distance has never halted armed forces, trade firms or rulemakers from showing care. Deep water is a private spot. Deep water is a hide. Deep water is a place you can stash gear or test feelers or listen with no gaze upon you. The sea is huge enough to gulp nearly anything. This is where the guessy tales start, the ones that rest on the rim of record and folk yarn. Some folks hear the Biotwang and think of live pings from strange tools throbbing in the deep, of trial plans laid on the sea like hidden tripcords. They picture rows fixed on slopes, free sleds sliding slow through black flow, gear built to chat with other gear. And then, as sure as tide, the thought swells into something more fabled, strange, sunken forms, USOs, crafts seen as gleams under the swells, tales of things rising from the sea and melting into sky, accounts that float through navy lore like glass half sunk in sand. There is no firm proof that the Biotwang fits any of that sort, yet the trench is a blank slate too strong for guesswork, for it is one of the rare spots left where the strange still feels solidly there. Not in word only, but in plain fact, strange, unstepped, unseen. Just a small count of human souls have ever gone down to the deepest bits of the Mariana Trench. Each drop is a talk with craft edges. Each one is a deed, a rare pass into a land that does not seek guests. When Jacques Picard and Don Walsh went down in 1960 inside the Bathyscaphe for Trieste, their trip at hours, falling through sea sheets like moving through worlds heaped atop one another. You are shut into the Trieste's weight ball, hearing the globe shift. At the start, there is the bright sense of the top. Calls, lists, the last shine of sun through a lid that soon means naught. Then you start to sink and the wet outside dims from blue to some hue weightier, as if color itself is being squeezed. The dials hold true, but your flesh stays braced for a noise that ought not come. The shell gives small, worn creaks, steel and build noting the load piling over you. Time drifts in a slow, set drop. No pain gives ease, just thick glass and the feel of being wrapped in leagues of wet. And then someplace in the deep a harsh snap splits the ball. It is not grand, just swift, neat, end-like. For one breath you are fully calm. You do not know if it is the sea swaying, the craft nesting, or a piece giving way. You press on all the same, for turning round would not make the weight less real. It would just make the strange seem nearer. The top glow faded into blue, then into ink. The wet past grew colder. The shell started to speak in creaks and taut metal hums. At one turn, they heard a hard snap, the kind that in a spot like that could spell the finish. They kept on anyway. At the base, they found no grand sight, but a spooky flat, fine dust, a pale waste in endless night. The deep does not always give back the human thirst for show. At times, it gives something grimmer, a sense of blankness, a sense that the whole is not built for us. Later drops, with new trips using fresh cams and grab tools, showed a sphere that is both frail and wondrous. Amphipods, shrimp-like eaters, show in the deep like floating pale bugs. Sea slugs crawl over dust like slow, clear cogs. Germs shape rugs where chem takes the place of sun. Life in the trench lasts on what falls from on high sea snow, the non-stop drizzle of once live stuff sinking from far top wet. But there is a bleaker, more knotted fact. The trench also takes in what we let fall. Plasts, bruise, marks of human work. The Hadal zone, once thought pure, has turned into a log of our reach. Even here in the most far deep on Earth, the top globe leaves smudges. And that grasp shifts the riddle. For if the trench is a log, then the Biotwang is not just a weird call. It is a query made in a spot that holds all but tells naught. Ponder what it takes to make a noise that can be caught far off in the deep sea. The start must be strong, or the stuff must swell it. It must happen in a path that bears sound. It must come back or be plain enough to note against the sea's steady hum. It must, in a way, be a thing there. So what sort of thing could it be? One guess that rests twixt life and land is that the Biotwang is a beast note shaped by the trench's sound ways. A beast call bent back, made big and turned. In this guess, the steely bit is not a clue to cogs, but a clue to span and twist. The sea turns a live tone into some sound that seems built, the way a gorge turns a yell into a choir. Another guess points to a rare ice deed. Though ice seems far from hotspots, deep sea heat builds, and far deeds can send signs across bowls. A calving ice cliff can make deep sounds that journey vast spans. The deep sea can hold the ghost of a far split, but the Biotwang's feel still seems too near, too exact, too there. There is too the chance of a thing we rarely own, that the sound is plain, but we just now caught it, that the sea has been making Biotwang-type calls for eons, and we had no ears to hear. We like to deem a find as unearthing some new thing, but oft it is just learning to hear. And still, with all these firm accounts, a bit of the mind fight's shut, for the Mariana Trench is not just deep, it is mind-deep. It rests at the rim of human grasp in a way that wastes and peaks do not. We can see chill, we can see black, but we strain to see weight so vast it shifts how stuff acts. We strain to see a web of life that runs on chem, not sun. We strain to see that the biggest home on Earth is the one we grasp the least, which means each strange sound turns into more than a sound. It turns into a sign. The Biotwang is one such sign, a hint that there are still tones in the globe that hold no tags. And maybe the most jarring bit is not that the sound was odd, but that it was caught at all. That we have tools down there, ears set to the void, hearing for stir, hearing for life, hearing for signs. And still we cannot say with trust what birthed that call. Somewhere over the trench, the top globe rolls on in sun. Sky forms and falls apart. Ships glide over the Pacific like wee dots. Folk live whole lives with no thought of the 7-mile drop under some strips of sea. The sea looks still, a flat blue sheet. But under that still, the trench bides. It gnashes and slips. It takes in what drops. It shields things that have never viewed sun. It keeps hush. And then, with no hint, it makes a call like a chord strummed in the black. Some tone twixt a groan and a twang, some sound that feels near like a mark. And if you see the hydrophone catch it far off in chill wet, if you see the tape play back in a room, the searchers lean in, brow knit, spin back, hear once more. Then the Mariana Trench quits being a spot and turns into a sort of gate. Not a gate you can walk through, but one you can hear through. A hint that the most deep bits of Earth are not bare. They are just past us. And the grim query is not if something dwells down there that spurns our tags. It is if we have already heard it, if the sea has already shown it to us in the sole tongue that can cross such span, if the trench has already voiced. And we just do not know how to grasp what it spoke. Yarn 2, the tombs under Derinkuyu, not all riddles voice in sound. Some are set in hush, cut in rock, tucked past plain doors, biding neath the souls of folk who stride the top with no guess of what waits below. And if the Mariana Trench is a gloom we cannot touch, there are other deeps we can step into, spots where the strange is not leagues down in wet, but mere yards under a town. In the core of mid-Turkey, In the odd land of Cappadocia, there is a place named Derinkuyu. From on high, it looks plain. Low builds, dusty ways, the day-to-day beat of field life. But under those ways, under the bases and the plots, there is a realm below so huge it shifts our sense of what old folk could do. It starts, as these yarns oft do, with some dull thing. A wall broke through, a vault made broad, a split that ought not be there. Chill gust lifts like a sign, and when a lamp is let down in the crack, the ray does not halt at a thin hole. It drops into deep. You are in a room that was ne'er meant to stir awe. Just a dim vault, stone tight all round, the sort of spot you go with set steps in your flesh. But the air turns the flash, the wall gives way. A slim gust of chill slips by your face, not like a puff from out, but like the breath of something shut too long. You bring the lamp near, and the ray picks up rough stuff and a dark cleft past it. You lean close, and the gloom does not toss you back. It takes the glow and keeps on. One pace, then a next. And the noise of your stir pulls in, your footfall drunk, your own breath swift too loud. The way pinches and spins, making your sides squeeze, making your gaze front. The walls seem cut, made with aim. When you tilt the lamp down the first fall of stairs, the steps keep going past where a mere vault should halt, past where the brain waits for a stop. The air is chill now, more still, as if the stone is live with a hid stream, and in that blink you get the plainest, oddest fact. This is no hole. It is a way in. Derinkuyu is not one cave. It is a tall town, a built home cut in soft rock, going down floor past floor, ways pinch like veins, steps slant down, making you turn edgewise, cells yawn with no hint, stockrooms, beast dens, cook spots black with fume, bits that seem less like a hide and more like a try to make life once more below. The bulk is the first start. This is no roof for one clan. In its most grand tells, Derinkuyu could have held scores of folks, maybe far more, when you add the works that make Last Stand real. Wind flues cut through rock, hauling air down and heaving stale breath back up. Wells touch deep wet, nooks for fat lamps mark the walls, and soot marks still hug the roof like old sky. And then there are the gates. Vast round stones set in tracks like mill cogs, rolled shut from inside. They can close off ways and turn paths to dead stops. It is a fine sort of shield, no wall pushed out, but a town built in, meant to be gone. Cappadocia's landmake lets it be so. Old hot rock spews laid down soft stuff, soft to cut, firm to stand when braced with care. Through eons, wear shaped the zone into peaks and cones, weird stacks that seem like ground from a far orb. Folk here have dwelt in rock for a long, long while, carving homes, prayer spots, stock cells and ways. So rooms below are no shock. What is more hard to square is the plan, the sense that this is no one build, but a heap, no one line but many, no roof dug in haste, but a plan made fine like built art. Sages have put forth time threads that cross ages. Some tie first roots to old folk like the Phrygians, known for rock-hew work. More point to later spans when Cappadocia grew a hold for Christ folk, and when towns faced raids and fights and had to find spots to fade. In those spans, dens below were not odd. Derinkuyu was part of a wide way of tucking right and life in stone, yet even when those takes are held, they leave a bit, for Derinkuyu seems older than one soul fear spell. Or at the least it seems it began as some other thing, a tool made plain, grown and reused as fright swapped masks through time. One of the most jarring traits is how livable it is. Cells for beasts hint that if folk went down they bore their life with them. Shared spots point to cook and meat. Some rooms feel like they were not dug for one eve, but for spans, long so the top globe could grow harsh and then lose thought you were air there. To see that sort of pullback is to see a changed sort of tick. Up top time is marked by sun and turn. Below time turns breath and flame. A sun is how long the fat lamps burn, how long the air stays sweet, how long stored grain holds off want. The town stops being a thing to stare at and turns a test of strength. Derinkuyu's deeper sense shows in wee bits. Some ways are meant tight, making a flow that can be held. Turns cut sharp, making blind bends where a guard could bide with lamp dark. Some cells rest like hubs, wide to hold a crowd, while more are plain work spots for press of oil, jars in stacks, grain to crush. In one of the broad rooms, the roof lifts more than you think, as if the hewers knew a folk can't spend each breath bent under stone, lest the mind start to press back. There are too some bits that feel near soul-aimed in plan. Cut cells that seem like prey spots or meat halls, where tones would ring soft on the rock. If they held right, talk, or just the balm of crowd, they hint that those who dwelt here caught a thing new guides still speak. Folk don't last cut off on food soul. They last on sense, and the wind flues, oft hailed as a skill, are more than a sharp shaft. It is the town's heart thud. The air down here is plain, not same, more chill, more dry, tinged with stone. In some bits you can feel a soft drift on your cheek, as if the rock breathes out. That feel turns the town from a dead wreck to something near live. You start to see the hewers test drafts with a flame, shift holes, grasp by the plain law of breath. If the fat lamps burn neat, the folk can bide. This is where the riddle turns solid. For wind flues are not just build, they are grasp. The hewers had to know smoke lifts, that air needs ways, that too much folk in too small a spot turns hold to choke. They had to plan for waste, for wet, for the slow needs that don't birth law, but fix if law holds. So when we ask who made Derinkuyu, we too ask who had the calm to muse on hid things. The Christ-hold guess, as case, tells how such spots may have been used and why hush held worth. Cappadocia's rock-cut prey spots and hid monk dens are true. The zones past hold spells of push, fight and doubt. Yet Derinkuyu's deep parts hint at an old way, for oppressed folk can take a town below and not forge the thought of one. It can gain a tool and make it pure. In that light, the lack of scribes starts to seem less like luck and more like a part of life down low. If your hold rests on hush, you do not scratch the map. You do not cut your tag o'er the gate. You show your young the ways by rote, and you seal the way in at your back till the top globe lets go. And yet rote is frail. Realms come and go. Tongues turn, a path falls in, a way in is sealed. A folk moves on. A town meant for need soul might go bare for a line and then turn a tale. A hold plan turns a yarn turns a thing to peer at. And with tide, the spot stays, while the cause fades to mist. That is the form of Derinkuyu's haunt. It is a win of human bend that lands to us as a half-told tale. We can gauge its drop. We can test its stone. We can build fair takes on its cells. Yet the first push, the prime flash one chose, that the globe on high could not be held true, still lurks past the rock. And maybe that is the core. Maybe the most deep aim of Derinkuyu was ne'er to be said plain, for to say it would call it back. Maybe for those who cut these rungs, to name the fright was a sort of misstep, so they made stead. They made a spot where fright could be born with no need to say. And with no clear scribe, the takes swell. The main view is calm and step by step. Small cells, vaults, stock holes made wide in times of doubt, tied up, dug deep through lines. Each test adds a path, a guard turn, a new floor. A tool place turns a tricky one. Not for one grand brain made it, but for much folk kept go back to the same key and made it fine. It fits how towns on top swell. Still, the vast roll gates, the guard pinch spots, the held ways, these point to a set fear. Not sky, but folk, hordes, troops, slavers, swift harm that could wipe a town in one sun. In that sphere, hid is might. If a folk could slip back in rock, shut the stone gates, and leave no sign of life up top, it could last a fear that would else end it. But a split stays. If your guard is hid, why make so big? Why make a town and not much small holds spread on the land? One vast knot is smooth, yes, but it is too a snare if found. Shut the wrong flue, stain the wrong well, and a hole down low turns a dug grave. Save if find was not like. Save if the hewers held to the first guard of all, that the foe would ne'er think the globe could hold a neck's skin. There are long tales of ways past Derinkuyu, tied to more holds below. Much are sealed or down now, and the thought has heft. A web shifts all. One hold is a box. A web is a shade land, a way to shift neath the top when the top turns harsh, and then comes a still chance get. See a folk come on old cells in the rock, past the yarns of their kin. See them dig those cells more in their own test, not full in grasp of the first plan, but sure that some soul ere them made it through with it. Each line adds to the knot, and the wise blur. The town turns away of fright, held live not by one deed, but by the rote that the globe on high can change with no word. This could tell why Derinkuyu seems out of tick, yet it still leaves the oddest ask, not how it was made, but why it went bare. For if a town below is made for fear, fear does not oft fade for good. It shifts shape, it moves, it comes anew. Still, Derinkuyu grows bare. Its cells hold no fume, its gates no more roll. The wind still sighs, but for none. Let go has plain roots, threats stopped. Ways fell, folk moved, upkeep grew too hard, all sound, and none feel done, for the town seems like it waits, like a float set by in the gloom. Still now, when you step down the clear floors and peer down, a way shut by rock and dark, you know a known feel, the one the trench gave us in sound, a rim past. The sea spoke in weight and span, a steely twang that could be life, land, or something else whole. Here the rock speaks in build, gates, flues, cells, a built hush that tells of a tale with no speech. If Derinkuyu was a hold, what was the first cause? If it was a web, how far did it stretch? And if it grew through times, whose palms made the first slice? And what did they deem was on its way? The top keeps its logs in ink and stone. But neath Derinkuyu, the log is held in lack, and in the stiff fact that some soul long past chose to make a next globe neath the first. And just like the trench, it leaves us with the same jarring chance. That earth has all read, he tried to tell us something, and we are still learning how to hear. Yarn 3, the ice knot of Mount Erebus. If that is so, then the next ask grows more hard, for not all hid spheres are cut by palms in still hot stone. Some are made in true tick, built and built once more by heat, weight and sky, in spots where maps seem like hints, and the edge can wipe self in breaths. There is a sort of build the orb makes on its own, not for hold, not for towns, but for chem, for odd life, for notes writ in steam. Far from Cappadocia's dens below, past all roads that lead someplace with aim, there is a peak, lifting from the south ice like a black fang. A hot mount that ought not seem so live in a land built on still. A spot where the chill is not just sky, but a whole creed. Mount Erebus. From far, Erebus seems like a split thought in snow. Its slopes are pale and wind-worn, the sort of white that does not gleam, but dulls like bone neath a slim film of frost. And then near the top, that white yields to bare hot rock, dark ribs in the ice flow's flesh, as if the peak has been trying to claw self-free for eons. Erebus sits on Ross Isle, not far from the spread-out folk dens that grip the south ice rim like pins holding a chart. To gain it is to step in a sphere where near is told in craft hours and sky slots, and where the plainest shift, stride, drive, soar, leans on the sky's nod. The odd part is that Erebus is not at rest. It is one of the rare few hot mounts on Earth, with a set melt rock pool, a wide mouth of hot stone that can be spied at times when the mist parts. In a spot built of frost, there is a bowl of flame that will not cool. The peak draws breath. And when a hot mount draws breath in the south ice, it does something weird. Its heat greets a land of ice-bound wet, and where the two meet, the sphere digs out. 'Neath the snow flats and the crisp wind-cut crust near Erebus' high sides, there are dens. Ice dens made not by slow thaw in spring glow, but by earth heat puff. Steam splits and hot gaps yawn in the ice holes, loosing warm air rich with stone dust. With tide, that heat cuts rooms and ways in the ice flow self, turning hard frost to a hid knot. See a step through a wee crack in the snow, and finding not black, but a dim hall of ice. The walls gleam. The roof bows high in slow bends, as if the ice flow got billed from swells. The light is sieved and ghost-like, blue, green, at times pale cream, based on how thick the ice and how steep the sun passed. You bend at the mouth and know the air shift, or you step full in. Damp, stone-tinged, soft, sharp. Your gloves brush ice that does not gnaw as it ought. You step in, and the noise of the gust fades at your back as if one shut a gate on the whole land. Inside, your headlamp meets a soft inner shine. Blue-white walls bending up to a roof that seems poured, not cut. Wet beads on the top, then frosts, then melts once more in the same place, as if the den can't choose what form to dwell in. You breathe, and your breath does not burst to frost as it does past. It hangs more thick, more warm, and you see the den is breathing back. Someplace deep, a still hiss holds. Not loud, not swift, just set. Steam finding its way through hidways. For a blink, you grasp why maps fail here. The peak is no one top, it is a stacked core, and you are set in one of its hid rooms. And then you know it. Heat. Not the heat of a warm room, not ease. A live heat, damp and steely like a sigh. In some of these dens, warmth can stay near freeze or e'en climb more, though the chill holds past. The gust tastes soft of fume and stone bits. Frost builds and falls in odd forms, plumes, pins, glass-like drapes. For the den is a spot where hot and chill are ever in talk. All is in flux, all is halfway twixt forms. This is the ice knot of Mount Erebus, a spot made by two clashing ends, ice and flame, saying yes for a short while to dwell side by side. In this entwixt sphere, sages found a thing that made the peak seem less like ground and more like a ask. Life, not the tough growths and germ films we think to meet in rough spots, those hard first ones that grip stone and last, but germ crowds that seemed odd lie fit to these dens, made by chem steps and cut-off spots. In some nooks, the den gust and ice hold bits of air and stone bits lifting from the mount's core. Black air, light stuff, brim stuff, parts that can feed live things that lean not on sun as top life does. In the tongue of life learn, they are far-end kin. In the tongue of yarn, they are a hint that life needs no nod from the sun. It is a thought that goes past Erebus, for if germ webs can last in these warm ice rooms fed by Mount Chem, then the south ice quits, being just a waste of ice-bound wet. It turns a twin, a ghost of far spheres. Spots like Mars with its hid ice and old mount acts, or that moon with its ice shell and hid sea warmed by pull heat. Erebus turns a tryout ground for star life, a spot where we test the finding of life in the spots we least guess. And that soul would be cause to make Mount Erebus a sage trek. But Erebus is not just odd for it keeps heat and germs inside ice. It is odd for it will not be held still. High ends twist more than the brain. They twist guide. Near the poles, lines of span come as one. Point tools lose their trust, and the hid shape we lean on starts to act else. The sky can be both clear and wild, for the light is wrong, flat, no shade, pulling gloom from the sphere till span turns past guess. In whiteout forms, snow and sky blend to one blank top. The edge is gone. Depth turns a trick. This is the sort of spot where you can walk on and feel with full faith that you stand still, where you can peer down and not grasp if you face soil or gust, where a soft slope hides a cleft like a seam in cloth till it rips. E'en the tools strain. Sky guides so sound elsewhere can grow less true near the pole ends, where star math is less kind and sky charge can jam sign truth. Sunbursts rip through the sky charge. Wave calls change. Chats fade in and out like a tone in a long hall. On Erebus, this lack of stead is more than a rub. It turns mood, a sense that the peak is not just rough, it is set on not aiding. And there is a more grim past here too, one that pins the riddle in something blunt and human. In 1979, a sidecraft hit the sides of Mount Erebus, a crash that turned a white peak side to a swift tomb. Those on board were not scouts in the old sense, they were sight folk drawn by the thought of seeing south ice from on high. And still, the peak took them just the same. This must be said not for the loss is a riddle in the ghost sense, but for it shows what Erebus does to trust. E'en with tools, e'en with plan, e'en with a new craft, south ice can smudge the line twixt faith and loss. The land does not care for aim. Thence the peak grew in the folk mind a mark, a sign of how swift the far south can turn grim. Erebus was no more just a hot mount. It was a tag you spoke with care, and yet sages kept going back, for the dens stayed, the melt pool stayed, the germs stayed. And each trek bore a still grasp that the peak's most deep part might not be what it shows you, but what it can hide from you. Folk slip in south ice more light than the new mind likes to take, not in grand scenes. At times it is a plain string of deeds, a shift in sky, a lost mark, a whiteout, a late turn. A soul turns a small and small thing in a plane of white, till they are just a gap. On Erebus, the risks grow. The ground shifts fast. Steam splits can eat snow spans. Heat can dig out holes neath a crust that seems firm. The same earth breath that makes the ice dens can too make soft the earth o'er them, turning a harmless top to a frail roof. And then there is the mind shape of the spot. How the peak makes you feel watched by blank. How in the thin gust and set chill, your mind grows full with mere last chores, leaving less room for the soft heed that keeps you sound. In the den webs, that heed is e'en more hard to hold, for inside the ice noise moves odd, steps grow soft, tones sink, the den drinks you. There are tells from those who test and speak of the ice dens as grand in a way that feels near wrong, like finding a warm room inside a ice flow is a break of the laws. The walls gleam, wet beads and freeze. At times, the gust bears a soft, set hiss from steam splits, like the peak hissing through tight teeth. And it is here that the ice knot earns its tag. For knots are not just ways. A knot hints at path, right, a walk-in that shifts you. What would it mean for a hot mount to hold a knot? Not just a web of paths, but a hid core where heat and life hold. A hid web shut in ice. Some sages see Erebus as a wild lab, a held space made by the orb self. The dens in this view are test tubes, spots where chem can be gauged, where germ codes can be drawn, where sky airs can be trailed and set side by side. But there is a next way to look, as a sort of log. Derinkuyu was a town down low that hints folk once chose to live neath the top. Its halls were made to guard, to hide, to last. The peak dens of Erebus are not built by folk, but they too stand for a pick down low, one made by land, a space neath ground made not for folk, but for ways that can't last on the top. In Derinkuyu, the lack of scribe vexed us. On Erebus, the scribe is there, but writ in a tongue we scant grasp. The germs found there stir asks that are not light to solve. How cut off are these den crowds? Are they bits of old sky times kept and shaped by mount heat? Are they still fed from elsewhere, borne in by gust grains and folk steps? Or are they true own life that grew in a shut-pole kiln? In some looks at rough spots, sages find code signs that don't match known kin neat, not for the life is weird, but for our lists are spare. South ice is scant drawn, the deep ground is scant drawn. The germ sphere is vast and our chart of it is still rough, so the most jarring shots stay plain, life that is just not known to us. And still, strange life shifts how a spot feels. If you step in a warm ice den on Erebus, you are not just in a land shape. You are in a web that might have been shifting still in cut-off while realms rose and fell elsewhere. You are breathing air that has brushed hot rock, that has flowed through holes in frost. E'en the thought of stain turns spooky here, for folk do not come to these dens as blank lookers. We bear germs on our breath, on our skin, in our garb. We bear heat from our flesh, damp black air. We shift the world just by being there. So a ask pops up that sages must treat with hefty when it sounds like thought. When we find life in a spot like Erebus, how much of what we find is of the place and how much is the shade of us? This doubt turns part of the riddle, not ghost-like, but deeply jarring. The thought that our nearness might re-scribe the very log we came to read. And then there are the yarns that live at the rims of the clear note, the ones swapped twixt folk who work in these spots long to shape their own lore. The way spark tools act odd in stark chill, the way cells die with no word, the way call tools go still, then rush back with a burst of hiss that sounds near like a tone trying to form. The way a sky guide can swear you are someplace you are not, for the sky blocks or for the sky dots are low on the rim, or for the charged sky is astir. Much of this has roots, chill drains cell life, frostbits can clog gear, bounce backs and split paths can twist spots. The pole air is hard on all gear we lean on, and still the form is what shakes folk. The sense that the peak makes a place where your tools lose trust at the verwai, flash you need them most. Erebus need not shift to be a threat. It needs soul make you doubt your own sense of way. There is too the Mount's voice. Erebus is known for a sort of set, deep wave quake, and for brief bursts, gas puffs and melt rock that hint the melt pool is no still thing. E'en when you can't see it, the mouth is a live jaw. In the dens, you don't feel bursts as you guess. Noise moves through ice elsewise. Shakes can turn far rolls, felt more than caught. At times a quake runs through the den walls like a slow shake. It is soft, light to push off, but see being deep inside a path carved by steam, wrapped by a roof of old ice, and feel the whole spot shake once soft like a live beast set cling its heft. In that blink, the edge twixt peak and live thing starts to smudge in the brain, and that is maybe the deep-est bit of the Erebus riddle. Not that sages slip in storms, or that sky guides fail, or that germs live in warm nooks neath ice. Those are all in some way clear. The riddle is what the peak makes you face. That the orb is not soul top, that the top is not e'en the main deed. Neath Derinkuyu, folk once made a next sphere. On Erebus, the earth makes its own without us and most lie blind to us. The ice dens are brief in rock terms. A vent can shift, a path can fall, a way can freeze back. The knot shifts self. If you mapped it one span, it might not match the next. The mount trims its own core, which means each trek is a call on something that may ne'er be in that same shape once more. A warm hut in ice is no fixed room. It is a blink, and blinks can gulp folk. Not always by tucking flesh, though the land has done that. At times it gulps them by tucking their trust, by hinting soft but firm that they are guests in a plan that needs them not. In the end, Mount Erebus stands as a trick with a beat, a hot mount in a land of frost, a knot that lives for heat, spurns to act right. A wild lab where life may be older, more strange, and more self-held than we like to dream. And when the sky shuts, when the sky turns a white wall and the gust starts to sand the sphere smooth, Erebus slips back to what it has always been, a dark shape in endless white, holding its warm paths hid neath a crust that seems falsely like trust. Somewhere inside that ice, steam keeps on. Germs keep on eating and splitting and lasting. And the peak keeps on breathing in its own hid rooms, still rewriting the map, sealing ways, cracking more, as if it is building a next sphere neath the first, and picking span by span who may find it, and who, if they step too far the wrong way, turns part of the knot's log, not as a tag but as a lost gap in the white. Yarn 4, the shut gate of Padmanabhaswamy Shrine. Not all shut spots are made of ice. Some are made of stone and right. of paths worn smooth by bare souls, of fat lamps that burn with the stead of set love, of words said so oft they feel set in the gust itself. If Mount Erebus is a knot that shifts its shape, then in South India there is a knot that will not shift at all, a build of trust guarding one sole doubt. In the coast state of Kerala, in the town of Thiruvananthapuram, stands the Padmanabhaswamy shrine. From past, it can seem like a work of still lore. Stacked walls, carved poles, a grand spire lifting like a painted peak past the ways. But shrines are not just builds, they are tick tools. They hold not just yarns but ways. They turn eons to rounds, bells, spice scent, walkways, the slow twist of a key, and past one set gate, a ask has waited longer than new India itself. For generatians, the shrine's hoard was spoke of as coast folk speak of gales, not as a whisper, but as a fact you heed from far. Kings of Travancore, the Lord State that once held sway here, held the god here, Lord Padmanabha, as the true king. They ruled as hands. Gifts flowed in not just from kings, but from sellers, roamers, and backers who held that giving to the god was a way of giving to the days to come. The hoard rooms neath the shrine turned a sort of down-low life tale of Kerala. Gold coins from far lands, gem-set garb made for right show, ceremonial arms, gem-studded crowns, strings of bright stones that seemed less like gems than pressed starshine. The more strange the sphere grew up top, crown shifts, self-rule, new rule scribes, the more the yarns of what lay down low seemed like the ghost of an old law kept in dark. Then in 2011, the old hushed words met the new state. A law clash o'er shrine care drew the gaze of India's High Court. And with that gaze came checks, groups, and the calm tongue of list. Vaults were to be split, things marked, guard judged. In a land where shrines can work as both pure spots and folk halls, the ask was not just what lay in, but who had the right to peer. When the vaults were split, the sphere learned the tales had been less than the truth. You are down there now, not in the sun of the yard, but in the more chill gust neath it. Stone tight on all flanks, the roof low to make you know your breath. The hall feels older than prepare. Someone's lamp pours a still gold pool on Iran work and cut tops, and the shades act like something live, stretching backing, not willing to stay. You can catch the soft click of keys, the held hum of folk trying not to speak too loud in a spot that has heard for eons. When the gate yields at last, it does not swing wide like a grand show. It gives with drag as if it recalls each hand that ne'er reached for it. And for a blink, you do not see hoard as a sum. You see forms, steel-catching glow, heaps and loops and thick gleams that make the room seem smaller, weightier. The gust seems to grow dense with the heft of what has been kept. Your brain grasps for sorts, coin, garb, gift, but the sight fights neat names. It just rests there, plain, and yet still unreal. Past thick gates and iron bars were piles of gold and bright stone, bags of coins, grand forms, priceless beads, and right things whose make belong to a far age. The shots that came, kept with care, part shown, were caused to light prints of everywhere. Folk began to speak of priceless hoard, of one of the most rich shrines on earth, of wealth so vast it seemed past chance to have been hid in plain view. But in the count and awe, one vault stayed else, not for it was more big, not for it was more bare, but for it did not split. It was called Vault B. In the shrine's low floors, there are more than one room, oft named in notes by marks. Most had gates with new locks or ways that could be met, though with care by keys and steps. Vault B, though, bore an old set. Its mouth was said to be shut, not just with steel but with use, a trust that the gate was not meant to be touched. And in spots where right is a craft, not meant to be touched is no mere hint. It is a build rule for the soul. Tells of Vault B tend to loop round the same odd bits. A gate graced with a form, at times told as a snake thread with no plain lock. Stead, ways speak of a naga bandam, a snake seal, In South Indian lore, snakes are not mere beasts. They are watchers. They dwell in rims twixt earth and under sphere, twixt wet and stone. They are called in groves and shrines, calmed with gifts, tied to growth and threat and kin. To say a gate is watched by snake gods is to say it is watched by a sort of cost. One tell put forth by faith folk is that the vault can so be split by a set rite, a fixed chant, done right by one with right in the right state of red. The term used at times is Garuda chant, a call to Garuda, the bird mount of Vishnu, who is in old lore the foe and cure to snakes. The thought is fable-like but clear. If the seal is snake, the key must be Garuda. From past, this can seem like sign. From inside a folk where sound is thought to shape fact, it can seem like a plain guide. And yet, e'en in those who take the soul frame with weight, there is a tense heed round the thought of testing it. Yarns cling to Vault B like vines, that splitting it would bring doom to the zone, that it would loose floods, that it would wake something that was bound there for a cause, that bad luck, sick, death, strife would chase those who tried. Some forms of the tale are bright, a past try that stopped short with snakes seen or with a swift and real force that made men draw back. More forms are softer, more sound, that the gate is old, the ways strange, and that the folks wrote has wrapped plain care in pure tongue. For there is a next sort of seal that looks a lot like a curse, a seal of rule. Vault B turned a crack line twixt halls, courts and groups set on clear view, and guard-faced wise folk an old way, keepers set on holding stead and pure. E'en in those in charge there was pause. The thought of 4 ing wide a shrine vault neath land gaze is not soul a flesh deed. It is a state meant on whose sphere is real, and there was too the plainest fright. What if it splits and what is in shifts all, not just in worth but in sense? Hoard stirs, asks, from whence, whose, theft, guard? When shown, it must be kept not by chance but by cams, watch, ears and rules. To split a vault is to shift it from the sphere of the pure to the sphere of the fight. So Vault B stayed shut, not full plain, not full marked. A gate in a base that turned odd, like one of the loud est hushes in New India. In the dim, cool ways neath the shrine, you can see the weave of that hush, the gust more thick than the gust above, bearing the soft stone smell of old rock, the sense that each step is a break and each weight is heard. Up top, wise folk do sun rites with skilled ease, feeding away like a steady flame. Down low, one room will not be summed. And what does it mean in brain in folk to have one room that can't be checked? It makes a lack, a spot where the brain can still roam. One guess put without soul tinge is that Vault B is mere lie at risk in build, that it may link to ground wet paths, or that its split could shake parts of the knot. Thiruvananthapuram is a coast town. Ground wet is a set press. Old shrine build at times ties wells, drains and hidways. If a room has been shut for eons, weight gaps, damp and rot can turn a split to a fall. A next guess is plan hide. The hoard I'll read I shown was vast, but past is full of hoards, split to show and need. In times of raid, lords hid their most soft parts, most deep, past the most folk-held walls. A right block is a more fine lock than steel, for it calls the whole folk as watch. If you make a town trust, a gate must ne'er be split, you need no key, for none dare make one. And still the hold of the snake yarns, points to something past plain use. It points that the folk near the shrine feel a thing in the thought of the vault, not of need a beast. A thing can be a vow, a bound set in tick. In the Vishnu way that wraps Padmanabhaswami, the god is not just a form. The god is a live point of touch. Gifts are not mere gives, they are ties. To split each room to some all can feel like checking a friend, and so the shut vault turns a deep ask. Where does want to know end and awe start? Newness schools us to treat riddles as brief fails. If a gate is, it can be split. If a room is, it can be gauged. But older soul sets at times treat riddle as a piece, something you keep for it shifts the worth of the whole. The strange is no gap to fill, it is a heft to bear. Vault B is that heft, In the word cursed may be too rough. A curse hints at spite. Much of these yarns seem more like signs built from eons of form sight. Folk have watched what comes when pure bounds break. Clash, loss of faith, the yuan weave of folk. They have watched how swift horde can turn a tool. Maybe the doom feared is not ghost at all. Maybe it is folk. But then you mind the snake shape once more, the nagas, the downsphere watchers, and the brain slips back to old air, dark air shots. What if the vault was not meant to guard horde from folk, but folk from what the horde stands for? In South folk lore, snakes off guard not gold, but knowing. They sit coiled round mouths to down spheres where vast force is kept. A snake seal in that reed is a sign that what lies past is strong, in a way that does not turn neat to coin. Some fringe tales take this more. They see Vault B as less a hoard room than a hold, that it keeps things drawn from elsewhere, bits from down realms, spoils from coast trade with far lands, things whose true worth is not their stuff, but their sign. That somewhere in the dark is a thing that does not fit in a hall, for it was ne'er meant to be seen. These thoughts are light to wave off, till you mind how oft past hides in plain view. How much a right thing has held a scratch, none read for a age. How much a garb piece has turned out a map, a bond, a tell in a vault that has ne'er been marked. The spread of shots stays vast, lie wide, and that is just why it scares folk. For the blink you split it, the tale falls to points. The snake turns steelwork, the chant turns old lore. The strange turns a list, and maybe some core thing dies in that change. There is a last, softer bit that makes Vault B seem less like a plot and more like a live nerve. Those who speak against splitting it off do not sound like folk guarding wealth. They sound like folk guarding a beat. They speak of way as if it is a frail tool. One wrong note and the whole song splits. In that frame, Vault B is not a locked room at all. It is a vow that not all will be turned to show. And still the new sphere does not like vows it can't test. Past the shrine walls, the town moves, carts, stalls, and news streams, thirsty for the next find. Somewhere in that din is the set who man need to know, to see, to check. The same need that sends sages in the ice dens of Erebus, charting ways that may fall at their backs. So the ask hangs, how long can a gate stay shut once the sphere knows it is there? If Vault B is split one sun, it will not be the sound of joints that counts most. It will be the sound in the brains of the folk watching, the click of a rim shifting, a move from faith to proof, from guard to bear. Till then, the gate stays in the base, calm, a shut rim watched by snake yarns and law paws, by awe and fright, by the jarring chance that some riddles are not unsolved, for we lack the tools, but for we cannot agree on what we may do with an ask. And deep neath the shrine, where stone holds its heat and tick seems to slow, Vault B waits like a shut lid, not bare, not told, just waiting for the sun. One decides the old est lock is not the steel on the gate, but the faith that split ting, it will change what the sphere is. Yarn 5, the lost knot of Hawara. Maybe that is the odd thread tying so much of the world's most stiff riddles. Not the threat of what is in, but the still clash or if we earn the right to look. For there are spots on earth where the past does not just rest neath our souls. It fights, it sinks, it seals, it smears self to mire and ground wet and fall in stone, till past turns less like a yarn and more like a whisper, a shape you near can trace, a rote you near can prove. And in Egypt, where the waste has kept tags for 50 eons, and where stone still throws shades that seem too long for a man's life, there is a spot told with such trust and still hid with such wholeness that it feels like a trick made of limestone. It is the lost knot of Hawara, a build that by old scribes did beat the pyramids in awe, a spot said to hold scores of rooms, a town of halls neath a roof, a stone mine shaped, set and vast, built not to stun one line, but to last past them all. And if e'en a piece of it e'er was as told, then the true riddle is not why it slipped. It is how something that big could be buried and left there. Hawara sits on the rim of the Fayum, a zone southwest of Cairo, where the Nile's gift turns something like an inland dream. The waste here is not the neat blank of cards. It is not TED. Salt, gust, low hills, plots, cuts, towns. Wet runs through it in folk-made lines, and the rim can seem still Ian when the ground is soaked neath the top. The name Hawara does not ring like Giza or Luxor. It does not flash in the brain the way a pyre amid does. It feels softer, like a spot you might pass on the road to someplace big. And that is part of what makes the yarn so jarring, for at Hawara stands the pyre amid of Amenemhet III, a lord of Egypt's middle kingdom, a time that does not get the showlight of the old kingdom Ants. His pyre amid is not as tall as Khufu's. Its shell has been stripped by tick, its core is mud, brick and stone, slumped and worn. From far, it can look like a low, worn mound that just so happens to have sides. But the pyre amid was Sol the hook. The true ore, the one that made guests fight for words, was the build next to it, the knot. When the Greek his to rise scribe Herodotus went through Egypt in the 5th Aeon BC, Idri wrote of much ore. He was not like moved by builds. He saw shrines, forms, tombs, the great stream and its rites. But when he came to the knot, his tone changed. He told it as a build that beat in the pyramids, not a shrine in the plain sense, not just a great house, something more big, more knotted, a vast yard of courts and halls with a wild set of rooms. He spoke of rooms that seemed to grow, of ways that turned and bent back, of spots up top and spots down low, like a planned mess, like a build made to make you feel small in your own want to know. Late scribes spoke the yarn. The earth scribe Strabo, writing eons past Herodotus, told the knot as well, tying it to the zone and the tombs of lords. Pliny the Elder made lists of knots through the old sphere and put Egypt's as one of the most famed. Through the eons the knot stayed a sort of build fable that ne'er quite went, for too much held names dealt it as real. And still, when new eyes sought it, there was near none. Just the worn pyre amid, the flat land, the hush of grit and tilled ground, the thought that whate'er had been there had been torn for stone long past, fed to late builds, ground down to plain blocks. But the tells were so clear they left a ask standing like a gateway in the brain. What did they see? Herodotus's most tempting bit is the bulk. A knot said to have held 300 rooms, half up top, half down low. E'en if the sums were blown, the aim past them is plain. This was no small ad. It was a sphere of rooms, in a folk that grasped the might of held way of gates, seals, watched ways such a plan points to use. For you do not build mess by luck, you do not make a wood of holes just to show you can. So what was the knot for? One tell is rule work. Amenemhet III ruled in a span when Egypt's rule was highly shaped. The mid-deal kingdom is oft held for its scribe web, its care with means, its works of cut and steer. The Fayum's own self was a ground shaped by folk will, wet-sent land-won plots made sound. In that frame, a vast knot of rooms could have served as a log core, a hub for tax, grain hoard, notes, and the endless scribe work of a realm. But that tell seems too new in the wrong way, for the old scribes did not tell it like a barn. They told it like a ore, a spot you could get lost in, a spot that felt live with plan. A next tell is soul-tied. Some sages have tied the knot to a death shrine, part of the grave knot that came with a pyre amid, where wise folk did rites, where gifts were made, where the Lord's rites went on past death. These shrines could be vast, full of pray cells and hoard rooms and halls. They were not just soul-tied, they were task-tied. They took goods, hands, rounds, and notes. They were cogs that turned tick to right. A knot-like plan could have been plain. Rooms for gifts, rooms for tools, rooms for wise folk, rooms for rule work, rooms for pure things, ways for walk, held way to in near spots. Knot could serve guard. But there is a third tell, the one that keeps the riddle live, that the knot was meant to be a wall, not a fort against troops, a fort against breach. For the knot rests in a long line of Egypt build that treats knowing as something to be staged, kept, shown soul by steps. In tombs and shrines, you do not just step in and see all. You move through rims, you pass signs, you are led, tried, set. You are told at each turn that way is earned, so see a build made to flood the sense of path. See halls looping like shapes. See gates that look the same. See yards that split to more yards, each one ghosting the last, each one making you doubt if you have been there ere. Now see that neath it, neath all that stone rule, there were rooms that held more worth than those up top. Herodotus wrote of down low rooms he was not let see, for they were said to hold lord tombs and pure beasts. E'en if that bit is tied in hearsay, it points to something known, held way, a bound twixt what guests could see and what they could so be told, which brings us back to the form. A shut gate, a banned vault, a build whose most key space is not the one you can shoot with lens. In the 19th age, those who dig up past began to look at Hawara with more care. They found signs of a big knot, base bits, shards, hints of vast walls. The British digger Flinders Petrie dug the zone in the late 1800s and found parts of Amenemhat III's death shrine, telling its bulk and the way it had been robbed and torn through tick. You are there with the work hands at the lip of the cut, the gust dry, but the ground strangely thick as if it recalls wet. Your boots push into dust and broke wear, and each scrape of the blade has that crisp sound, stone turning back to grit. You brush off a slim sheet of grit and the line shows. Straight, planned, too neat to be luck. A turn, then a next. The shape keeps going and you feel it ere you gauge it. This is no wall. It is a set. The sun makes the bare limestone pale, near soft, but when you run your hands on it, it is chill with the drag of worked rock. You stand looking o'er the cut and the sight shifts shape in your brain. Not a lone pyre amid on a flat land, but a print of something vast, robbed down to its frame. The ground seems to hold its breath, as if the next skin might split to paths that are no more, or to spaces that still are. He found that the spot had been hurt deep, stone took, used once more, wiped, and still Ian Petrie's work could not full set the thing. For once, a build is robbed down to its bones, you can chart its print, but you cannot feel its inner sense. You cannot know how the paths wove. You cannot know what it did to the brain of someone walking through it for the first turn. And in the 210th age, the yarn took on a new spook I cast, one shaped not by old script, but by new tools. Ground wet turned the foe. The Fayum zone is no dry, fixed stand. Wet steps shift. Cutwork shifts the ground, dig skins turn damp then soaked, mud brick melts, stone sinks. What stays is a spot that is hard to dig without set care, pumping, draining, holding up. To say it plain, the knot is not just burr-eyed, it is wet-logged, and wet is a prime keeper of hid bits. It does not tell itself like a shut gate. It just makes the work past hope in slow steps. It turns dig-ging a bet. It eats trust. It makes each cut a chance drop. So new tries to look at Hawara have hit the same block again and again. The spot is soft, and the air is rough to straight dig. This is where the riddle sharpens to something near thought deep. For what do you do with a ore that can't be sound, lie shown? In late years, there have been claims, at times made loud, at times fought, of far sense looks in the zone, ways like ground poke radar, spark drag, magnet pull, ways of seeing with no splitting the earth. Some notes speak of odd bits neath the ground near Hawara, straight shapes, box forms, prints that seem like walls, the kind of shapes that could be wild but could too be builds. And these hints, these shades have fed the new mind the way sound waves fed the mind of the deep sea. For an odd bit is the mean est kind of proof. It hints without showing. It calls faith while blocking trust. If the knot was true lie as big as the old ones told, then it ought to leave a sign, base bits, stone scraps, prints in the ground down low. But if it was torn well, if stone was borne off for eons, then the sign might be in bits, broke, ghost-like, a plan with missed leaves. And worse still, if parts of it were built from mud brick and softer stuff, then tick and ground wet could have turned rooms to stains, paths to soft tight shifts. Not gone, just smeared. There is too the thing of blown tell. Old scribes were not new builders. They told what they were told, what they saw, what struck them. Sums could be signs. 300 rooms could be a way to say too much to some. The knot could have been vast without being as told, but in a smaller knot, scores of rooms, scores of courts would still be grand. So the ask turns, what stays and what is gone? One guess points to the knot's lost name as just the end of its breakdown. Egypt has always been a spot where old stone turns new stone. Shrines are pits, ruins are stuff. A build near folkland is soft to be torn, block by block, till its grandness is spread through late eons. A next guess points to the shot that the knot's core is still there, buried more deep than guessed or drowned or fell in ward. The old ones spoke of down low parts. If those spots were, they could still be sealed by dust and wet, kept in a way the up-top halls were not. Down low spots oft stay, for they are harder to rob, harder to reach, and lighter to lose thought. And then there are the fringe shots, the ones that cling to the sides of the past note like dust in a beam of light. Some see the knot as a keep not just of rule notes but of script, maps, right law, a spot where the state's rote was kept in stone rooms. A script hall ere script halls, shaped not by shelves but by rooms. It is light to dream that thought. But Egypt did keep logs, it did hold notes, it did write tax, land, gifts, wise folk and laws. So the ask is not if notes were, it is if a build of this bulk could have worked as a vast word tool. And if it did, what would be the dig sign of that? Reed sheet scarce stays in wet, ink fades, wood rots. The rooms could be real, and the knowing could still be gone, which is maybe the bleakest shot of all. That we could find the knot and still not find what we hope it holds. For at times the riddle is not what was hid, but what was lost. There is a next soft skin to Hawara's yarn, tick. Amenemhat III ruled in a span when Egypt was firm to plan for long views, but too tense to put in rule. The Mid-Del Kingdom rests twixt times of split. It bears a sense of how fast rule can fall. That sense can be felt in builds, in forts, in rule care, in the neat steps of might. A knot in that frame is not just a build, it is a say. It says the state is not Ted. The state is vast. The state is not meant to be full grasped by one soul walking through it. It is meant to be moved by those who know the ways. And that is where the knot turns more than past dig. It turns a sign that has made it through, for it still feels true. For we are still vexed by builds that hold more rooms than we can step in, more paths than we can chart, more gates than we can split. And Hawara is one of those spots where the real and sign lay o'er so well that the rim twixt lost spot and lost thought grows thin. If you stand near the pyramid of Hawara today, you are looking at what stays past eons of take and sink. The waste gust is still, the rim is wide, the ground can look plain, but somewhere neath that flat, neath mire and wet and broke stone, there may still be lines that make no sense as land, right turns where wild leans to bends. And if that is true, then the knot has not gone. It has just slid to the one spot where who man trust all ways weak eens, down low. New dig like a hand reaching for a knob keeps pausing. Not for the build is watched by curses or snake gods, but for the earth itself has turned the lock. Wet press, fall risk, rule work, gold, the long calm of stone. And so the knot stays in a strange state, twixt lore and look facts, twixt Herodotus' ore and the soft words of past dig. It is a ore told so loud in the old sphere, and still soft now, not wrecked in one grand deed, but worn through eons to lack. And lack, when it has a name, turns a sort of press. For each time the yarn is told, the knot builds itself once more in the brain. Yards splitting to yards, halls glinting light, ways pinching, gates looping, a build that feels like thought made into stone. And somewhere down low it all, the lower rooms that the guest is not let see. Maybe they are bare, maybe they were robbed, maybe they ne'er were as told. Or maybe in a spot where ground wet lifts and falls like a slow breath, they are still there, sealed not by right, but by force, waiting in dark, filled with silt and hush, holding naught but the shape of what used to count. And that may be the most haunting shot, that one sun we will at last find the knot. And the great est riddle will not be what was hid inside, but why something so vast was built at all, and why the earth has worked so calm for so long to keep it from being seen. Yarn 6, the Devil's Kettle of Minnesota. Not all knots are built by human hands. Some are carved by ice and tick, some are etched into stone by a calm stream, and some are so plain, so seen, so seeming plain that the brain keeps looping back to the same ask. Sure there must be a tell, sure it must be near till the ask itself starts to seem like the sole thing that is real. And so from the Bur-ID halls of Hawara, where a build of past chance scale may still be sealed by force and hush, we float to the north woods of Minnesota, where a stream seems to step in a gateway in the rock and ne'er come back out. It is the yarn of a falls called the Devil's Kettle, a spot where half a stream slips, a spot that has gulped dye, bounce balls, sky guide bugs, and still won't say where the wet goes. To grasp why this is jarring, you have to see the north shore of Lake Superi, or the way it real lie is. Not as a card, but as a ground that feels older than rote, dark spruce and birch, chill gust that smells like wet stone, a soil quilt ed with moss, growths and thin roots grip ping old bedrock. The sense that the sphere here has been scraped down to its hard base and built back slow by rain and snow and set sea suns. In this land, streams don't drift, they slice. The Brule Riv Ear is one such stream. It runs through Judge C.R. Magnay State Park, not far from the lake's rim. And for much of its path, it acts like all swift north streams. Clear wet, small rush, a hard rock bed, a push to move on, and then it hits the falls. Here the stream squeezes itself into a tight throat and the sound shifts. It stops being a light rush and turns something more thick, more set. Wet, gath-eared to force. A devil's kettle, the brule drops in steps, surging o'er dark rock into a foaming bowl. White mist lifting like breath. But the name does not come from the seen part. It comes from what comes right after, where the stream seems to make a pick. At the lip of the main drop, the wet splits. One side keeps going downstream, churning, loud, live, forming back to the stream you can chase with your eyes. The next side tilts toward a round mouth in the rock, a smooth, dark hole that looks less like wear and more like a planned drain. And into that hole, a vast part of the stream pours. It does not just spill, it gives. You are there at the bar, close that the chill mist dots your sleeves, and the roar fills your chest like a next heart thud. The rock neath your boots is slick with mist, and the stream comes in a rush. Green, brown, and thick, then splits itself at the lip as if it can't pick which way to be. To your left, wet keeps live. White foam racking on, seen, true. To your right, it bends and drops in a round, dark mouth in the stone. The hole is not grand. It is worse than that. It is neat, and it keeps tacking. You lean on, and the mouth seems to deepen as your eyes shift. No base, no shelf, no bright show down low, just moving wet gone into a black that will not gleam. You think of dye, of bounce balls, of the small sky guide bugs folk have trusted like prayers. And you can near feel the pull to test it yourself, for the slip is so there it feels past chance. And still the stream keeps feeding it breath past breath, as if the earth is calm like gulping proof. Wet folds to black, gone neath the rock as if the earth has split its jaw and picked a drink. Folk stand at the bar and watch, and near all have the same move. They lean near. Not for it is threat in the plain way, though it is, but for the brain waits for a mouth. A den lip down low. A roaring underground path seen through a crack. A next falls where the gulped wet bursts back to sun. But there is naught. No scene show, just the set sound of wet going in and the jarring lack of wet coming out. For generations, this has been a low-cal oddness. One of those wild bits that gets a name, then a yarn, then a steady flow of guests who come for the shot and leave with the same UN-spent ask. But the ask will not stay small, for the brûlé is no drip. It is a true stream. A stream has to heed the most basic count of wild. And yet, here at the Devil's Kettle, the count looks wrong. If you watch long, you start to see that the hole does not act like a plain pothole. The wet dives into it with wild speed. The rims are worn and smooth, as if the rock has been drilled for a long while. And there is a weird lastness to it, the way the flow slips without mist, without splashback, without the sort of wild stir you would guess if the hole were thin or blocked. It looks like depth. It looks like a path. It looks like something that ought to have a place in the land. And when you can't find that place, the brain begins to fill the chart. Some folks see a hidden system, an underground stream threading through the dark rock. Others see a crack leading straight to Lake Superi or a lone pipe neath the wood floor. Some softly hold a more fable thought that this is a sink not into land, but into something older, an old wound in the rock left by ice. A spot where the earth lost thought to shut itself right. But the thing that made Devil's Kettle famed was not just the yarn. It was that folk tried again and again to prove the tell. They did what folk always do when a riddle seems held. They threw something in. O'er the years, guests and curious locals tried small tests, sticks, leaves, bits of foam, and of course, the famed bounce balls. It seems near childlike at first, the bright weightless sphere gone in the black. The crowd watching downstream, waiting for the wee dot of white to show like proof, but it does not show, or rather, it near shows in a way that sways. A few yarns say one came up far downstream, more yarns say none e'er did, and the doubt soul feeds the spot for the tests are so plain that fail feels near your own. It is no ask of dear gear or far sky dots. It is a ball and a stream and the hope that wild ought to act right. And then the tests got more stern. At different times, dye was poured in the hole. Hue meant to turn the riddle to a trail you could chase with your eyes. If the wet came back at a spring or seeped in the stream bed downstream, the dye would tell it. If it went to Lake Superi, or maybe the lake's rim, or a near stream would bloom with hue. But the ends were maddening. Either naught plain was found, or the blend and thin made trust hard. The stream does not pour soft. It stirs, froths, splits self to drops and mist. Dye can fade in wild stir. It can cling to swirls and nooks and come out so soft that soul tools would know it. And Ian, if you found a trace, you would still have to prove it came from the kettle and not some other way. So folks stepped up once more, this time in the new tongue of trail. Small sky guide bugs were dropped in, or tools meant to send, meant to tell their spot like a heart thud through the dark. It sounds on words like the end of the yarn. If the wet goes someplace, the bug will go someplace, and it will tell you. But wave call and rock do not get on. A bug can lose sign neath a few feet of soil. Under firm stone, it might as well be burr-eyed on a far orb. And so e'en the most sure tool fix turns a next gift to the hole, a next thing that steps in, a next thing that does not come back with a tell. What makes this spot so trance-like is that it rests at the meet of two truths that do not like each other. The first truth is plain. The laws of force do not take rests. Wet does not fade. It moves, it seeps, it pools, it comes back. If half a stream slips in the ground, it must be going through something, cracks, pipes, whole rock, toward a place that can in sense be found. The next truth is just as plain. The sphere is full of builds that are past our light glance. Ground down low shape is no neat plan. It is a threefold knot of splits, joints, faults and holes. Some made by plate force, some by old hot flow, some by the grind and pull of ice sheets that once pressed and scraped this land like a slow tool. Devil's Kettle sits in a zone with bedrock that tells a hot mount yarn. Dark stone and old flows laid down long ere the woods came. Dark stone can split in ways that make hidways. It can form joints and cracks that link like pipes, hid till wet finds them. Add to that the harsh past of ice, the north shore shaped by frost that came and went, pressing melt wet into cracks, carving ways, leaving past guess holes, and you start to see how a stream might find a strange route. One main guess is that the lost wet does not really go far at all. It might just join the stream downstream through a web of underground ways and small seep points, coming back so slow and spread that none standing on the path can see it. Wet can go neath the seen stream bed, hugging the rock, showing us scores of small springs that feed back in the way. A next guess is that the Kettle is tied to a more deep split zone, an undergroundway that bears wet off from the near stream path and looses it more out, maybe in wetlands, maybe in a different drain set, maybe toward the lake by a way that is short in span but full hid in flesh. And then there is a less grand, but just as jarring thought that the half a stream tell is what fools us. The split looks fair at the lip, but in wild push sets, sight lies. A guest might see one branch gulp a vast bulk, but the stream is throwing wet eve everywhere. Mist, foam flow back. The true part might shift by time, by flow, by the shape of the push that sun. The Kettle might drink less than the eye thinks, and what it drinks might be sent back near in ways too soft to catch with no careful gauge. But if that is true, if the riddle is part lie a trick, why does it feel so long-lasting? For Ian, trick has to be told. Ian, if it is a smaller part, that part still goes into black, and black still won't show what it is doing. And the man brain does not do well with a seen move with an unseen end. It makes a sort of brain itch. You can stand there, watch the wet go in, and your mind starts to go with it. You see the dive into a tight stone throat. You see a down-low room carved smooth by eons of force. A hid path roaring with trapped push. You see the stream moving neath the wood floor where tree roots drink from soil that has been touched by wet that ought to be in sun. And then your mind does something else, something softer. It starts to ask what else we take without seeing. For Devil's Kettle is not the sole spot where the orb seems to gulp wet. Sinkholes, gulp holes, gone streams, cast lands through the sphere are full of streams that slip underground and show up miles off. But those spots oft come with a sort of tell built in the land. Limestone, dens, springs, known sets with maps and dye trails and setways. Devil's Kettle feels different, for it sits in a ground that does not shout dens. It is no textcast zone where you guess streams to slip in a Honai comb. It is a sharp odd bit in a hard northland, a drain where your gut does not want one to be. And that makes it feel, for lack of a fine word, planned. Not planned in the ghost sense. No horns, no folk beast bent neath the rock, but planned in the way the man brain reads prints, a round hole, a split stream, a neat slip. It looks more like a made tool than a blind hap, like a valve set in the stream bed. This is where the fringe thoughts slip in soft, with no need for faith. Some folk think of folk-made change, an old blast way, a past try to shift flow. Some lost trade test from a time when streams were seen as tools. It is no big thought, and the ground speaks against it, but the shape calls the thought. Authors treat the Kettle as a sign of the strange neath us. A spot that tells us the ground is not firm in the way we play it is. That neath the thin skin where we walk and build and name things, there are holes of wet and air and stone that we ne'er chart for most of our lives take place on the top. And then there is the sound. It is set, a deep, wet roar that seems to rise from the rock itself. And when you can't see the wet's path, the sound turns your soul proof that something is happening down there. Stir hid from sight, force hid from check. It starts to feel like hearing at a shut gate. You know there is a room pass, for you can hear it, but you can't split it. And the more you hear, the more you start to see shapes in the din. The most jarring part of Devil's Kettle is not that learning is weak, learning is calm. It will gauge, shape, test, mend. It will in time shrink the shots till one tell holds. That is what learning does. The jarring part is the span in twixt. The long stretch where a plain ask fights a plain tell and the spot goes on as a folk riddle. For in that stretch the kettle turns something else. It turns a glass for our hopes, a hint that known is oft just not yet put to test, and that the top of the sphere is no true guide to what lies neath it. At Hawara, the earth kept a knot by bur-ing it. Here the earth keeps a knot by letting it run. A stream pours into black, and the land won't point to the mouth. You can walk downstream on the brule and hear wet once more, see it shift twixt rocks, see it gleam where sun splits through leaves. It looks plain, it looks summed, and still if you have stood at the kettle, you bear a next shot in your brain. The stream split ting, the whole drinking, the lack of proof. It is hard to shake, for it points to a strange shot that the sphere has plain looks it wears for us, and hid parts it keeps for itself. And if the Devil's Kettle is in the end just a set of splits in dark stone, just ground wet ways, just wet coming back unseen, then the riddle does not fade. It just shifts shape. It turns a hint that our feel is not tools, that the most key moves on earth, wet flowing through rock, press shifting in hid skins, ways forming and falling through eons, hap pen where we cannot watch them. The orb does not do its moves for a crowd. We stand at the bar. We throw in our die and our bounce balls and our trackers, and we wait for the sphere to act in a way we can grasp. And the wet keeps falling. Half of it keeps sliding in a black mouth in the stone. The wood keeps breathing above it, blank. And somewhere neath that rock, if it is a short path back to the stream or a longer unseen way toward the lake, the wet keeps moving through a black we can't chase, as if the earth is calmly gulping proof. And the most haunting part is this. If we once undraw the prime plan of where the Devil's Kettle leads, if we chart each cracked way and hid turn, there will still be a blink at the falls when the wet slips. And for a flash ere the tell lands in your brain, it will look like a gone. And in that flash, the old ask will still be there hissing neath the roar. If the earth can gulp a stream in plain view, what else has it learned to keep still neath our souls? Yarn Sev En. The deep life sphere neath Earth's crust. There are spots where the orb does not just hide wet. There are spots where it hides life. Not on the top where sun writes the laws. Not in woods and seas where food chains start with the sky. But neath the crust, neath the rock we treat as firm and last, where press mounts, where holes pinch, where black is whole and still something lasts. It starts with a plain jarring thought. The ground neath you is not dead. It is not a bare base. It is not a neat rim twixt here and down. In cracks the width of a hair, in stone seams, in splits split by old load and still soft shifting, there is chem, slow calm chem that can be eaten. And if something can be eaten, something can live. Sages call it the deep life sphere. The term sounds clean, near neat, like a tag on a pot. But the truth is not neat. It is a sphere of heat and heft and tick. Life working on rock clocks in a sphere where a sun has no sense, where light has ne'er stepped, where a live thing may take eons to split once. The riddles here do not tell themselves with a fall show. They show in core bits, in mine wet, in the soft smell of hydrogen when rock is split wide, in sums, cell counts, form counts that swear a still truth. The orb is live, in spots we ne'er meant to see. To reach this sphere, you do not sail to a far isle or dive in a trench. You go down in shafts cut by trade and want to know. You chase the gust down past the point where sun turns rote and the walls start to sweat. In deep mines, gold mines, white gold mines, there are steps where the rock is warm to touch, where wind sets raw like tool lungs, where the black feels real, and at times in wet that seeps from old splits, something waits. You are there now. Headlamp shrunk to a small clean round on stone. The path gusts dry and steel, and the deeper warmth lifts through your boots, as if the orb runs a slow fervor. A hose line guides you to a split in the wall, a spot where rock has cracked just so to weep. The wet that pools is clear, near pure, but it bears a smell you can't place. Sharp, clean, soft spark. You stead a clean flask in gloved palms, careful not to touch the lip, watching drops bead and fall with a calm that feels older than the mine itself. When the drawer fills, you cap it and mark it. And for a blink, the sole sound is your own breath and the far roll of cogs above. Late in the bright hold of a room, the sums show. Cell counts where none ought be. Chem marks that don't match top stain. Hints of a life fed by rock and wet soul. The truth lands soft, but it shifts the path at your back. It was ne'er bare. In some South African mines that cut miles in earth, searchers found germ crowds in ground wet, cut off for vast times, not just hid but sealed off. Wet moving so slow it might as well be still. In these drawers, the sign was not of live things lasting on scraps washed down from top. It was of live things lasting on the rock itself, on the force loosed when wet acts with stone bits, split ting and shifting, macking hydrogen, a hid fuel in a light-less sphere. It is strange to see a thirst for the orb's own breath. And once you take that, the brain starts to stretch. If hydrogen can feed life, sun is no more a need. If rock break can split bits and make workforce steps, a life sphere can be with no tie to the top at all, like a next sphere laid neath the first. This is where the yarn turns less like life learn and more like a still fear of bulk. The more deep you go, the more you see you have been walking above an unseen land of live chem. The deep life sphere is not one home. It is a patchwork. Splits, wet beds, whole spots in dark stone, the rims where wet meets rock and swap bits. Some of it is hot, some chill, some of it is salt thick, some of it is sharp to strip steel, soft to feel like soap. What links it is not ease, but last. Down there, the foes of life are everywhere. Press that smashes holes, heat that speeds rot, want not in suns but in eons. And still, live things shift by slowing till they are near the same as stone. They form rest cells. They mend blueprints at ice pace. They use charge parts the way top life uses sweet and air. On the top, we think of food as a thing you can see, a leaf, a fish, a husk. Neath the crust, food is a step, a gap in charge, a lack in chem waiting to be made fair. Life turns a sort of calm count-keeping, tacking gain of the orb's pull to fall to fair. And one of the most jarring bits is how small force it needs. Some deep germs live on the thin nest rims you can see. They don't live fast. They don't live loud. They live like coals burr-eyed in ash there, but near not. They may spend past think spans in hold mode, mending bits, waiting for a soft flow of hydrogen, a hiss of salt fume, a trace of black air to turn to something of use. If you have e'er stood near an old stone wall and felt it beam heat long past sunset, you know the sense. The deep life sphere is like that. Held force, slow loose, hid heat. But the more deep riddle is not just that life is. It is the ask of what sort of life this feeds. For a sphere with no sun is a sphere with no known. No green, no sun eat, no swift bloom of life chased by fall. In the deep life sphere, change does not have the same beat. Shifts come, but pick is softer. Groups a small ear, cut off, split by stone-like isles, split by seas. In that cut-off, lines can turn old, strange, far gone. Some searchers have told deep germ webs as a sort of live log. Cells that may keep chemtricks old earthen woods, old earthen beasts, older than the first knot webs on land. Not for they are rough, but for they fill nooks that have not changed much in eons of eons. Rock, wet, heat, chem. It is a humbly thought. While realms rose and fell above ground, while ice sheets pushed and pulled, while the top was burned clean and refilled by doom, These live things kept doing what they do, slow still, endless lie neath the crushing calm of stone. And then there is the bulk ask. When folk first hear of germs in mines, it can sound like a weird bit, an odd note. But the deep life sphere is no den with a few tough ones. It is a patchwork spread through crust and dust in ways we can scant draw, not packed like a rainwood, but spread through holes and splits. And that leads to a spook I flip. The top, which seems like the real sphere, may be the thin, bright skin of a much bigger live press. Of course, the deep life sphere is not kind. Some of it is poison. Some of it is rough in ways we have no words for. And still, it is strangely steady. The top can shift in a year, dry, blaze, flood. Down low, a split can hold the same wet chem for spans that beat human sense. It is a sphere where tick turns a press of its own, which means if something goes wrong down there, it can go wrong still, and for a long time. There are spots where boring has cut ports in this hid sphere, bore holes that slice through rock like pins through flesh, pulling up wet and airs that have been trapped for times. In some cases, the act of drawing shifts the world, letting in air, shifting press, walking sets that slept. The rim twixt watcher and watched turns astir, and this is where the riddle thick ends for our knowing leans on break. We guess life from chem marks, from gas with a form count that hints at life, from stone bits changed in ways that hint at germ work, from life code bits caught in wet drawn up from deep. But the more deep you go, the harder it turns to know what you see. Stain turns a ghost that haunts each draw. Are these live things true, lie from the deep or hidders from the top? Sages fight this with neat steps, clean tools, trace checks, holds, but the ask ne'er full fades. In a sphere built of hid cracks and sealed nooks, trust is always rough. And still, with those doubts, the proof heaps. One of the most grabbing sides of the deep life sphere is that it seems to bloom at rims, spots where rock meets wet, where stone bits melt and shape once more, where faults grind and loose fresh tops. Fault lines, most of all, have a weird part. They are not just breaks in the crust. They are ways. They shift wet. They blend chems. They make heat. They crack rock-macking hydrogen and more active bits. In a sense, faults are cookrooms. And at times they are more than that. They are paths twixt realms. There are deep split sets where wet lifts from down low, bearing airs and mixed bits from spots we can't reach. In hot mount zones, in earth heat fields, in plate dive zones, wet flows through deeps that near the rims of live ability. There the deep life sphere blurs in a next riddle. Where does life end? We tend to see a hard rim, a deep at which heat burns all life. But the truth is more like a step. Different live things bear different states. Some last in heat that seems past chance. Some last in high press and wild salt. The rim is no line. It is a shifting front based on chem and wet hold as much as heat. And that front counts, for it shifts how we think of life past Earth. If Earth can hold webs that run on hydrogen and rock wet acts, if life can last with no sun, then ice moons with hid seas, rock spheres with live land, Aeon spheres we once waved off as dead turn spots for life. The deep life sphere turns the hunt for life out by turn in our gaze in. But Aeon without space, the hints are jarring, for once you take that life can be deep underground. You have to think what else might be shaped by that chance, as case the deep carbon round. Some deep germs make gas, others eat it. Some fix black air into mass with no plants. Some turn salt fumes to sharp, shifting stone chem, and the blend of wet. O'er long spans, this is no small thing. It is a down-low life beat that may touch the chem of ground wet, the birth of ore heaps, e'en the states that make some rocks sound or not. The orb's core is not just land, it is land with a pulse. And then there is the oldest ask, one that comes back in a new shape each time we face a riddle like this. Starts. Was life born at the top in warm pools and sunlit flats, then latter spread to the deeps? Or did life start in the dark in chem-rich spots and soul latter climb toward the light? Some thoughts point to hot, wet sets as start zones, spots where stone steps and heat could have driven first chem. The deep life sphere makes this feel less like guess and more like a ghost. If life can bloom on chemsol today, maybe it always could. Maybe the first webs were not green, but unseen. And if that is true, then the top sphere we know, woods, beasts, seas lit by sun, may be the late part, not the first. There are two strange hints of cut-off that near the spook why. In some deep worlds, the wet seems to have been cut off from the top for vast, long times. If germs have stayed there, bred slow, shifting in dark, then these crowds may be like life isles, trapped in tick. A sort of down-low place, but sealed past rock. What would change look like there? What tricks would rise in a sphere where force comes not as feast and lack, but as a steadwise, small flow? Would work as one win? Would fight? Would live things turn more smooth, more small, more tough than aught on the top? Or would they turn strange? The deep life sphere too touches a nearer human dread. We are digging more deep than air. Mind's paths bore holes, keeps for waste, force pull. In doing so, we meet with sets we scant grasp. We crack splits, we shift ground wet flows, we let in heat and press shifts. We join parts that were ne'er meant to meet, and that lifts a soft haunting shot. Not that some beast lurks down low, waiting to climb out in a grand blink, but that we are already stirring old balance, shifting hid webs without e'en seeing. See a split that held its chem steady for a million years, then a drill bit pokes it and air rushes in. A new force start shows, germs that slept wake. Others die, a slow fare, shift still for good. No headline, no sign, just a shift writ in chem. There are spots on Earth where the rim twixt top and deep is thinner than we think, where airs seep up through faults, where warm springs lift bearing stone bits and hisses of the crust's core, where hydrogen and gas leak into thin wet beds. At times these are hailed, spar towns, earth heat fields. At times they are feared, strange flames, odd smells, wells that bubbly as if the earth draws breath. For a long span, folk read those signs as ghost, as gates, as down sphere vents. Now we have a next read, they may be the breath out of a live deep orb. But e'en that learning frame does not take the dread. It sharpens it, for it points to the earth neath us is not dead. It is active, it is reactive. It is lived in, not by beasts we would know in the dark, but by life forms so small and so calm that they can turn stone to home. And at times, if you stand in the right spot, near a fault, near an old mine, near a borehole drawing wet from deeps you can't see, you can feel the mind spin of it. The sense that neath the day-to-day sphere of sky and roads and tones, there is a next sphere pressed against it, split soul by a thick of rock that we have learned to poke. The Devil's Kettle asked where wet goes when it slips. The deep life sphere asks a more deep ask, one that does not roar but hisses. If life can be in dark, fed by the orb's own slow chem, then the crust is no wall. It is a home. And home calls for naught. It calls for strange branches of change. It calls for webs we have soul drawn like crumbs from a spread we can't see. Somewhere miles down, wet moves through old splits. Stone bits melt and shape once more. Hydrogen pools in wee nooks. Rock break still splits bits apart, losing force one piece at a time. And in that calm, set work, cells last, splitting once in years or eons, living so slow that to them our whole time is a brief blink at the top. And the jarring part is not just that they are there. It is that we do not know how far down there goes. We do not know how much of the orb is still held, and we do not know what forms of life, shifts, chembeats, tricks have had eons of eons to make themselves fine in a sphere with no light. For when you look at the ground neath your souls, it feels like a floor, but it may be more like a lid. And if the earth can gulp a stream in plain view, maybe it can too hide a whole live world in hush, one that does not need us, does not notice, and will still be there long past the top has changed past knowing. The ask then is not soul what lives down there. It is what we might wake by digging. And if one sun we will see the deep life sphere was ne'er true, lie neath us at all, soul cut from our sphere by a thin crust of guess. Innate the uncharted woods of the Congo Basin. Not all hid spheres lie neath stone. At times the strange is not buried in black neath our souls, but standing upright, breathing and green, so dense with life that it turns its own sort of night. A spot where sun is yet scarce touches the ground, where span is told not in miles, but in how far you can shift ere the wood shuts at your back once more. To leave the deep life sphere is to rise from press to damp, from stone hush to an endless choir of bugs and birds. And still the feel is strange lie known. The sense of stepping in a web that has been here all along, running on laws older than us, scant touching our charts. For in the heart of Africa, spreading through more lands like a live land in a land, lies the Congo Basin, one of the most vast hotwoods on earth, dense, damp and big to gulp roads, rims and trust. It is oft told as green in sky shots, a vast smear of leaf green through mid-Africa. But from inside it, the hue turns something else. It turns depth. The green is stacked. Canopy or low growth o'er shade, shade o'er mire, mire o'er wet, and wet o'er a base you cannot see. The wood is not one spot. It is stacked spheres, one on top of the next, all moving at different speeds. And that is part of why the Congo Basin stays one of the most strange spots on earth. Not for none live there, scores do. Not for it is untouched. Log mine and fight have scarred its rims and carved ways in parts of it, but for e'en now, within that vastness, there are zones that are by work strange, not strange in a poetic sense, strange in the plain, true sense that no deep life check is. No road stays clear year-round, no set human press holds the ground long to gauge what moves through. It is a spot where unfound is no romance word, it is a learning truth. New sorts are still being writ in mid-African woods. Plants, frogs, bugs, fish that were always there, living whole lives in hid streams and leaf waste, while the new sphere clashed o'er what was still left to find. And e'en in sorts we think we know, acts can stay strange. You can have a tag for a beast and still not grasp what it does at night, where it moves in the rain time, or how it feels the sphere neath the canopy. The Congo Basin is too a spot where folk have lived for a very long span, where knowing is born not in school books, but in rote, in trails, in signs hissed in young ears. This is home to scores of crowds, including first wood folk such as the Mbuti, and more groups whose lives are close tied to the beats of the wood. There are yarns here that do not start with a trek note. They start with a print in wet clay, a snapped stem that ought not be snapped, a stretch of stream that the old ones shun with no need to tell why. And stacked in that human sphere is a next skin still, crowds living in more deep cut-off. Some with small touch, authors told as unmet or not known by the outside sphere, not for they are fable, but for farness and lack of stead can make long note hard. In a zone where land fight step and rule can make trek threat, strange can be the born state for long times. The Congo Basin does not just hide sorts, it hides yarns. It hides roots, it hides folk, it hides the very proof we would use to calm ourselves that the sphere is full marked. And in that space where learning is still reaching the bulk of truth, one yarn will not fade, a name that floats at the rim of beast learn and folklore, told with a weight that makes outsiders tense. Mokele Mbembe. Based on who you ask, the name has been turned in different ways, oft made as something like one who halts the flow of streams. The shot tied to it is strange lie firm, a large beast tied to far swamps and stream sets, at times told with a long neck, a thick form, something that sounds oddly like a live ghost of old beasts. To the new brain, it sounds like a yarn that ought to have died the blink we built skyships and sky eyes. And still, it did not. Part of the cause is land shape. The Congo Basin is not one wood, but a web of woods, streams and wetlands. In some zones, the land turns swamp, an endless spread of wet log growth, float plants, hidways, black wet that throws the sky back like oil. Swamps are not just wet woods. They are wild logs that scarce give up what they hold. They keep prints short, then wipe them. They gulp husks. They twist sound. They hold span. If you have ne'er been in a true swamp, it is hard to grasp how full it shifts your sense of scale. You can hear something move and have no thought if it is 10 yards off or 5 score. You can see a rip play and not know what birthed it. You can spend hours moving through reeds and find yourself in what feels like the same spot, for each rim is the same looping shape of green and brown. In such a ground, the line twixt unchecked beast and something else grows thin. And this is oft how it starts. Still lie in the smallest piece of real in something the wood lets you note for just a blink. You are there standing at the rim of a slim dark stream where the wet scant seems to shift. The damp push is against your skin like a warm cloth. Each sound is near. Wings flick, bugs tick, far calls you can't place, till with no sign the wood seems to hold its breath. You step on, and the mire gives soft sucking at your boot. In the soft ground, near the wet line, you see it, a press that does not look like the spread marks of birds or the known stir of a plain cross. It is more deep than you guess, smooth in a way that makes you wait, as if the heft that made it had no place to spread, but straight down. You bend, careful not to harm the rims, and the gust smells of wet leaves and slow rot. Through the way, reeds shake once, then still. A rip pole spreads out, prime calm, stretching to the throes till it turns naught at all. You see how swift the wood can wipe what it shows you, how light this could be gone in an hour, in a rain, in the next passing beast. And for a blink, the Congo feels less like a spot you seek, and more like a now picking what you may keep. But Ian setting the yarn by, the Congo Basin holds riddles that are more than hid beast tales. It holds the sort of riddles that learning knows as true tests. Gaps in grasp made by the sheer rough of doing search at scale. Take the wood itself. Hot woods are oft called the lungs of the earth, but that term is too plain. The Congo Basin is not just a mass of trees breathing air. It is a vast carbon set sucking, holding, and losing carbon through growth, rot, and fire. It touches rain prints. It makes its own sky. It is a live engine whose inner parts are still being learned, and those parts are shifting. Climb shifts, tree loss and land use shifts are shifting the beat of wet and dry times. When the beat shifts, beasts shift, move paths shift, birth rounds shift. A sort can turn more hard to find, not for it is gone, but for it has moved in ways we did not guess. And in a wood that already fights watch, Ian's small shifts can make the dream of slip or the dream of something new coming. This is where the Congo turns jarring in a softer way, for the riddles here are not always grand. At times they are soft, a spot where a call is heard that can't be matched to a known bird, a set of prints that seem too big for the guest beast in that zone. A yarn told through towns that tells the same form. A meet at a stream bend, a stir in a fish spot, a swift hush. Learning when it is true owns that strange is not a fail. It is a placeholder for what the sphere has not yet let us gauge. The Congo Basin is full of those placeholders. Some of the most strong riddles spin on the plain fact that big beasts can be shocking hard to trail in dense worlds. Folk think that if something big were, sure we would have seen it clear, but sight is not pledged. Dense wood can cut sight lines to a few yards. Beasts can move at dawn, at night, in rains. They can dwell in swamps where man way is small. And proof, prints, waste, fur, bones can be wrecked swift by damp, bugs, clean-up beasts, and the chem of rot. In the deep life sphere neath Earth's crust, life is hid for it needs no light. In the Congo Basin, life can be hid just for there is too much life. The wood eats proof, and that eating has shaped not just life, but human mind. When local tales speak of something strange, the outside sphere oft frames it as old faith, but that frame can be a sort of pride for local. Knowing is watch, knowing built through lines. Folk who live with the ground learn its plain prints. They learn what a hippo sounds like when it moves through wet. They learn what a great beast does to green. They learn the gap twixt a crock stir and a sunk log shifting with push. And when something does not match the print, they note. That does not mean each yarn is true, but it does mean the yarn is hooked in life. So what is Mokalembembe truly? There are sound shots that need no rewrite of bone past. Wrong sea is the first. In swamps and streams, part views can make strong prints. A beast's back breaking the top, a neck-like shape made by green, or a swimming beast seen at a tilt, a great beast's trunk lifting past wet. Hippos, too, can seem near old beast in low light, their nose and eyes showing like old cogs. There is, too, the thing of rote itself. Yarns change, bits sharpen through tell. A tell turns more grand, not for one lies, but for retell picks for what feels true. A next shot is that the name Mokali Mbembe might not point to one sort at all, but to a box, a wide term for threat, rare or strange beasts of the swamp. Much folk hold such sorts, a name that is less sought and more sign, a word that means just do not go there. But then there are the wilder shots, rare last ones, strange big beasts, something passed o'er for our checks are spare. Here is where the Congo's bulk counts. The Basin is more big than Alaska. It is not one field spot, it is a patch of grounds. In it are zones where searchers scarce work for long. Some parts are so rough to reach that Ian building a short workbase turns a task, and for so much learning work leans on repeat watch, going back time past time, putting out trap cams, drawing draws at a time. All zone that breaks that beat can stay in the shades. Could a strange big beast last in such a spot? Most life-learned folk would say it is unlike lie for something as grand as a live old beast. Big backbones leave life prints. They need food at scale. They shape their world. And still, unlike lie is not the same as past chance. Most when we think that the past of beast learn holds more than one beast once waved as yarn. Okapai, Mount Folk, Ian the Koela canth shown not for the sphere swift changed, but for who man heed at last lined with what was already there. The Congo Basin, in other words, is the sort of spot where a find can feel like a haunt, for it makes a ask we do not like to speak. How much of the sphere do we soul trust in once it steps in our paper work? And then there is a next skin, one that knots all. Who man clash and use have oft broke learning way to parts of the Congo Basin. When a zone lacks stead, long-term life watch turns near past hope. Keep work fails, steal hunt lifts, beasts move more deep in holes. And in that shifting, strained ground, the line twixt wild riddle and human, grief blurs. At times the strange is not a beast. At times it is the lack of sound news itself. We know that the Congo Basin holds vast life sorts. We know it holds sorts not yet told, and that much sorts are at risk ere they are e'en named. We know the woods and wetlands can hide big beasts for long times. We know that who-man yarns last for a cause, e'en when they can't be checked on call. But there is one more cause the Congo Basin feels like a true strange spot that learning can't full tell. It shifts the watcher. In wide grounds, folk feel big. In towns, folk feel in rule. But neath a hot canopy, your scents are tuned new. The gust is thick, scents with rot and bloom at once. Your skin grows aware of each drop of sweat. Sound turns set, chirps, clicks, far calls, the hush of shifting leaves. The wood does not feel bare, it feels packed, and the more packed it feels, the more it turns plain that you are not the core of aught. Those who seek and work in such spots oft tell a strange mind work. The sense of being watched, not by a hunter of need, but by the wood itself, by the scores of unseen lives that know you long ere you know them. In that state, e'en plain deeds, an unseen beast crashing off, a swift hush can feel grim. It is light to see how yarns take root here, but it is too light to see how those yarns might keep real watchers hid insideward. For the Congo is not sole a spot of beasts, it is a spot of rims. Rims twixt known and strange, twixt writ learn and lived knowing, twixt what can be shot and what can soul be told. In trap cams, those tired less tool eyes that have turned beast search have walls here. A trap cam is sole as good as where it sits. It watches one hall, one clear, one path. But the Congo Basin is a knot of halls. A beast could pass just yards past the frame, for air unseen. A stream bend could hide something big neath dark wet, and the lens would catch naught but ripped pleas and thrown leaves. So the riddle lasts not for the sphere is magic-y, but for the sphere is vast, and our ways are slim. And maybe that is the more deep theme, tying the deep life sphere neath the crust to the uncharted woods of the Congo Basin. In both spots, life blooms past our plain reach. In both spots, our tools have grown. Still, our trust has not kept pace. We can drill in rock and find webs that feed on chem. We can soar o'er woods and chart their top, and still hold skins of being stayed just past sight, living in the rims twixt what we can gauge and what we can soul guess. The Congo Basin keeps breathing, keeps shifting, keeps hiding, keeps showing. At times in new learned papers, at times in local signs, at times in the swift show of a beast that makes us rethink what we thought done. And somewhere in that green vastness, in the swamps and streams where the wet is dark and the wood leans near, there are spots where folk still hush their tones, spots where the stream seems to wait, spots where if something big moved through the reeds at dusk, the soul proof might be a shaking line of green and the odd sense that the wood saw you first. For the most jarring shot is not that an old beast still dwells there. It is that the Congo Basin, like the deep life sphere, tells us how thin our knowing true lie is. A thin crust of guess. And if we e'er push too hard in that green hush, we may find that the wood was ne'er waiting to be found at all. It was waiting to stay strange. Yarn 9. The den that screams mobile cave. Not all riddles lie bur-eyed neath green tops. At times the strange is not spread through a land-wide waste. It is locked past stone and hush, sealed so full that eon air itself turns a piece of past. For the Congo Basin was not sole a hint of how much we have not mapped. It was a hint of something more jarring, that the sphere still holds spots that fight us on a more deep step. Spots that do not just hide from human eyes, but work by laws that were ne'er writ for us. A thin crust of guess, and if we e'er push too hard in that green hush, we may find that the wood was ne'er waiting to be found at all. It was waiting to stay strange, and somewhere far from the Congo, neath the still hills of Romania, there is a spot that took that thought as truth. A den that did not just keep hid bits, it kept tick, it kept breath, it kept life in a form that would not live through one clean lung full of the sphere above. This is the yarn of Mobile Cave, a spot at times told as a sealed life web, but that term is near too soft, too clean, too safe. For what waits in Mobile is not just a hid room. It is a world that feels like a clash against the way we think life ought to work. The den lies near the town of Mangalia, not far from the Black Sea coast in southeast Romania. From above, there is naught fable about the land. Fields, roads, plain human shape, the sort of ground you would ne'er guess holds a far sphere neath it, and that is part of the dread. Mobile was not found for those who sought, chased a yarn, or trailed an old map. It was shown by chance in the New Age during land look and build work in the late 1980s. A man-sized mouth to black, a nook of air that did not act like air. You are there in the first blink the earth yields, standing at the lip of a slim shaft that ought not be. The light from above turning the rim to a hard white ring. You inch near and the black down low does not look bare. It looks thick like it has heft. Your headlamp ray drops down and fails to meet a soft end. Soul, wet stone, and a tight throat of way that seems to drink the glow. The first breath you take is wrong, damp, sharp, sour in a way you can't place at first, and then it lands on you. Brimstone, not as a smell, but as a sign. You by gut breathe thin near, as if the air might harm you for tacking too much. Each sound seems grown. Your own breath out, the soft drip of wet, while the space down low stays blank. You are not thinking of hoard or ore. You are thinking of air. You are thinking of what could dwell in a spot that does not want you. And at its back, a set that seemed to have waited in lone for a span of tick so long, it stops seeming like past at all. The first thing you must grasp about Movile is that it is no show den. It does not call guests with lit walks and bars. It does not greet crowds. It is not Ian Light to step in to. To reach it, you go down through a slim false shaft, tight, straight, trade-like, more like reaching a use path than a wild ore. And then the den takes over. Low ways, tight turns, rough stone that pushes in near, as if the earth is trying to keep you from holding there is a sphere above. But the true rim is not the rock. It is the air. Movile's sky is ill-famed, for it is wrong by top marks, low in air, rich with black air, and laced with airs like brimstone and gas. In most dens, you fret about get ting lost. Here, you fret about get ting one breath too bold. Brimstone is the smell of spoiled eggs, but that tell does not arm you for the way it feels. Sharp and wet, as if the air itself has fangs. At higher steps, it can dull your sense of smell, which makes it more threat for your own flesh stops warning you. Black air, thick and unseen, can pool in low spots like a wet you can't see. Air, the thing you take as given in each word you have ere spoke, turns a ration. And still this is no dead spot. Movile is live, not in the known way. No sun, no green plants, no sun-eat feeding the base of the food line. Stead, the den runs on chem, on the slow, old life beat of rock and wet and air. The heart of Movile is a down-low lake and a set of air nooks, spots where the poison sky meets the warm stone-rich wet. This is where the den's true self shows. A damp-sealed small climb, oft-told as warm, next to outside dens, with wet clinging to stone, and a set sense of breath held too long. In this world, germ crowds form mats and films, slip-rye, pale, at times floating, at times clinging like live paint. These germs are not plants, but they play the same part plants play in the top sphere. They make food from chems. This is chem life. Life pushed not by light but by acts, most of all the burn of brimstone and other parts. In plain words, the den's germs can take poison stuff and turn them to force and mass. They build a whole life web from what would kill most beasts. And once that base is, all above it turns possible. Small spine, less beasts graze on the germ mats. Hunters chase the graziers. Clean-up crews work the leftovers. Blood drink heirs and break down hands, not the web. A full food line blooming in a spot where sun is ne'er touched. This is why Movile jars sages and yarn spinners alike, for it looks like a shape of how life could be elsewhere, neath the top of Mars, under the ice of that moon, in all sealed dark spot where chem gives fuel. But it is too jarring for a more near cause. Movile is not just different, it is blank. It does not seem to care that folk cannot be long there. Inside the den, searchers have writ a wild sum of sorts shaped to this poison sphere. Much of them found nowhere else. Pale beasts with shrunk eyes, leg joint beasts that steer by touch and chem hints, arachnids and leg beasts that hunt in dark, wet-dwelling shell beasts moving through the lake's shade. When you see a den web, you might think of a plain sphere, a few bats, a few bugs, a drip of life. Movile is no drip. It is a self-held test running at full strength, live in more than one skin from germs to hunters. And what makes it more strange is the timeline. Movile is oft told as being cut off from the top for eons of eons. If the sum is just as neat as it sounds, counts less than what it stands for. Deep tick, long for change, to take a sphere that started as something plain and carve it to something fit, sealed and clear. long for life to lose thought of the sun, long for a web to turn so tuned to its own sky that fresh air turns killing. For that is the trick at the core of this riddle. The beasts of Movile are not just lasting in poison air. They are lasting in air that is poison to us, and the air that keeps us live would shake them. So Movile turns a deep thought spot as much as a life-learn one. A spot that flips the normal human yarn. We like to see ourselves as the base, our states, our needs, our sky. We call other worlds harsh, as if the whole is set to our ease, and all else is odd. Movile tells a different yarn. It points that harsh is a thing of view, that life does not have to throw back the top sphere's sense, and that the life sphere may be far more big than the green skin of earth we dwell in. There is a cause some folk call Movile the den that screams, not for it truly howls, but for it feels like it ought. For all about it reads like a sign, a locked gate, a sealed room with the wrong smell at its back. E'en the learning bears a shake of fright when you sit with it long. Those who seek step in Movile must treat the world with a sort of right care, watching air, cutting time, moving with care through slim ways that do not let fear. In spots like this, fear is not show, it is use. A wrong step is not a scare, it is a fall. And there is a next skin of haunting bit that hangs round Movile, the thought of stain. When you find a spot that has been cut off so long, you do not just fret about what it might do to you. You fret about what you might do to it. Each step is a chance bring of germs from the top. Each breath out shifts the chem of a sealed nook. Each breath you take in that space is not just you eating air. It is you adding something back in a set that grew without you. So the den turns a sort of live log, not of who man passed, but of life's shots. A log writ in germ film, in the form of blind arachnids, in the acts of beasts that have ne'er seen the hue of the sky. And once you frame it like that, the asks start to grow in the dark. For if Movile is sealed, blooming, chem-pushed, then how much more Moviles are there? Not of need as famed, not of need as reach a blue, but hid in cast grounds under flats, neath peaks, dens with strange chem. Deep nooks of life that ne'er meet the sun, whole germ kingdoms in rock holes, and wet beds living slow, lasting in states we once would have called past chance. This is no guess in the sense of dream, it is a hint drawn from a real spot. Movile makes us receive the rim of liver blee. The top sphere is loud with life, woods, seas, beasts moving in sun. But neath that, Earth's crust holds a vast bulk of dark home, splits, holes, nooks, den webs, wet sets thread through stone. Movile may be a rough case, but it is too a hint, and that is where the thoughts start. Not about if Movile is real, for it is, but about what it means. One main read is plain, and in its plainness deep. Movile is a wild lab for chem life webs. It helps us grasp life-earth chem rounds, the rims of life, and how webs can last with no sun. It is a port into first earth states, when air steps were else and germ life held sway. In that view, Movile is a hint that the top sphere, the sphere of plants and beasts and breath of blue air, might be the new air part, not the first one. That life started in chem dark and so late learned to farm sun. But there is a more deep learning riddle tied to Movile, and it is not about germs. It is about cut-off. How truly sealed is this den? For sealed for eons is a term that calls both awe and doubt. Wet moves, rock cracks, air's trade, e'en a den that seems cut off may have soft links, a slow seep, a small way, a split that breathes o'er long spans of tick. So some searches for cuz on the den as a set in balance, kept by a blend of air in, ground wet chem and germ work. In this view, Movile is less like a tomb and more like a shut-in geen. Steady but soul for all inside is tuned to all else. That tuning is what feels spooky, for it means the den is not still. It is active, breathing in its own way, eating parts, marking others, riding carbon and brimstone through lived bodies you can scant see. A next set of thoughts leans into star life learn, the shot that Movile is a stand-in for life past Earth. Chem life is no rare trick. It is at hot vents in the deep sea, in ice-locked lakes in the deep life sphere. Movile gives a more reachably held form of that sense. If life can bloom here, it can bloom in other dark spheres, spheres we have not yet split. And then there are the fringe deep thoughts, less about what Movile is and more about what it stands for. Movile is a spot that fights human gut so sharp lie that it calls fable by chance. To some, it feels like a rim point twixt spheres. One earth above, one earth down low, a spot where the orb's plain face is shown to be a thin habit. It is the same fear that rings in the Congo Basin's green hush. Not fear of a beast, fear of a world that does not need you. Fear of seeing that riddle is not always a waiting for a fix. At times, riddle is a home, a shut loop of being that would go on prime fine if you ne'er knew it was there. And that is where the scream turns word once more. For Movile does not scream in sound, it screams in hint. It asks, if life can turn this strange 'neath our souls, what else has grown out of sight? If a den can hold a sky that kills us and feeds something else, what other skies are in hid nooks of earth? If a web can base its whole being on poison air, what would it look like in spots where the chem is more strange still? And maybe most haunting of all, if this den stayed sealed so long and we have soul just split its gate in the last few years, what else have we already split without seeing what was in? Movile is kept now, held, learned with care. But the act of find can't be undone. The den has been named, stepped in, gauged, drawn. The outside sphere has touched it, and in that touch there is a still pull that ne'er full leaves the yarn. For when folk find a sealed spot, we treat it like a prize. But sealed spots do not always want to be prize. At times, they are sealed for a cause that is no ghost at all, just life. They are soft, they are balanced, they are live in a way that leans on staying untouched. And still we keep turning the leaf. We keep splitting the gates. We keep swearing that each hid room must turn part of our chart. Somewhere in Romania, Movile Cave keeps on its slow chem heart thud. Germs still feed on brimstone and gas. Blind beasts still steer damp black. Hunters still chase where no sun has e'er cast shade. And above, on the top, the sphere moves on. Carts, tones, bright air, air rich dawns. Two skies cut by stone. Two forms of life, each killed to the other. And the strangest part is this, Movile does not feel like an odd bit, it feels like a glimpse, a hint that neath the thin crust of guess, the orb may be running scores of other tests in hush. And if one sun we find a next den like Movile, a next sealed nook, a next wrong sky, a next web built from poison, we may have to ask the ask that Movile leaves hanging in the dark. Are we finding these spots, or are we stopping them? Yarn 10. The odd bit of Lake Vostok. Not all sealed spheres are hid in limestone. Some are hid neath heft. Some are pressed flat neath tick itself, neath ice so dense it turns the thought of top to a hearsay and the thought of way in to a deep pick. In Antarctica, there are spots where the gust scours the snow to hard glass, where sun and night can last for spans, and where a human stand feels less like a build and more like a tell left out on a white blank stone. And neath one of those stands, neath 2.5 miles of ice, there is a lake that has been blur-eyed so long that the last time sun touched its wet, the sphere was past knowing. Land sat else, sorts were still learning what it meant to be new. Who man past, all we call time, had not e'en begun to dream of itself. This is Lake Vostok. It does not gleam, it does not rip play neath a sky, it does not throw stars, it does not freeze and thaw with the turns. It is in endless dark, sealed neath an ice cap that acts like a lid on a press cooker. Save this cooker has run for eons of eons. And for most of human being, Lake Vostok was not a spot. It was a lack, a blank in the chart, a hush in the brain. Then slow through bent ways, through the strange sense of ghosts and pull and waves, sages began to guess what the eye could not see, that neath the Antarctic ice there were not just rocks and trapped air, but wet, vast pools of wet. Ice-locked lakes hid like organs neath a frozen skin. Lake Vostok turned the most famed of them, for it was not small. It was no puddle. It was a gee ant, scores of miles long, tens of miles wide, deep to gulp towns. A fresh lake more big than some land's whole rote of some mare. And in the human brain, a thought began to form soft at first, then louder, then past chance to not heed. If the lake has been sealed for so long, what has dwelt inside it? The thought feels near fable, a web trapped in the dark, growing with no sun, with no turns, with no touch, a cut-off branch of life, running its own still timeline, no stop. But the more deep sages looked, the more not Ted the ask grew. For the lake is not just wet neath ice, it is wet neath press. It is wet, kept wet not by heat from above, but by heat from down low. Earth heat rising from the earth's crust and the vast press of the o'erhead ice lowering the freeze point. The ice above is not still there. It moves slow as a land's sigh. It flows. It pushes down. It grinds on, and at the base it melts and refreezes, and melts once more, making a set trade twixt hard and wet that is both a wall and a sieve. There is e'en a strange stuff called ad ice. Ice that forms when lake wet freezes to the bottom of the ice sheet above it. For years, this was one of the sole ways sages could touch the lake without true stepping in. By learning the ice that had once been wet, now lifted up like a froze-on note from a sealed room. And when they learned that ice, they found signs that made the brain race past the facts. Came hints, marks of stone bits, prints pointing the lake was not bare. Then, in a move that felt like a gateway cracking wide, notes rose of life stuff, strange life code signs pulled from drawers, thought to be tied to the lake world. The hint was soft, burst, that germs might be there, maybe unique, maybe old, maybe shaped to states not like aught on the top. In a sphere where each new web found neath harsh states turns a glass held up to star life learn, Lake Vostok at once turned more than an Antarctic oddness. It turned a test case, a run-through. For if life can last for eons in a sealed, lightless lake neath crushing ice, then what about the hid seas elsewhere? That moon with its own ice shell and guessed wet sea neath. That moon spraying wet steam in space from cracks like wounds. E'en Mars, where marks of neath top salt wet teased the shot of burride holds. Lake Vostok began to feel like a note from the days to come, an earth-line match for spheres we cannot yet touch straight. But Antarctica is not kind with way in. To reach the lake you would have to drill, and drilling is no clean deed. Drilling is a break-in. It is heat and rub and slick stuff and strange germs borne down like hideaways. It is the risk of turning a pure world to a stained test of wrecking the very thing you came to learn. And here the riddle deepens to a sort of pull you can feel in the yarn, the need to know, pulling against the need to leave, untouched. For years, teams worked at Vostok Stand, an outpost planted on top of one of the most chill spots on Earth. In this set, drilling turns a right, down, 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 through ice that holds trapped bits of old air, through skins that log climbs and times, through pressed past, each yard is not just depth, but tick. The more deep you go, the more you are moving back. And then at last, the drilling hit the rim, near that the next step would mean touch. You are there in the tight humming space where the work turns strange lie near. Your gloved palms steadying tools while the air feels too dry, too thin, too chill to trust. Outside is a land of hush, but in here the drill build shakes with stiff life, turning and turning as if it can bore through past itself. You watch the reeds as depth turns a sort of countdown. Each new sum means a next slice of old ice given up, a next sealed skin split to the now. You can't see the lake. No pain, no gleam. So the thought of it waiting down low like a dark leaf in a book none has earned the right to read. When the team speaks, it is still, held, near in awe. Stain is no far word and why more. It is a fear with heft. One wrong step, one careless shift, and the find turns a print left on glass. So you hang at the rim of touch, feeling the pull of being near to shift something for good, and not yet knowing if hold back is learning's highest skill or its greatest grief. The sphere watched still, for it was the sort of learning blink that feels like a leaf turning in a sealed book. But stead of win, what came was care. Fears about stain, about what had been used in drilling, about what might be let in the lake, about what might be brought up, began to own the yarn. The very act of piercing the lake was dealt not as a plain tech step, but as a right-wrong test with no neat fix. And in the shade of those fears, pokes were stopped. Speed slowed. The lake stayed mostly sealed, its black untouched, its wet unstirred by the straight press of human tools. To some, this holdback is the most haunting part of the yarn, for it points that we are standing outside a gate we could split, but pause to touch. Like diggers of past waiting are breaking a tomb seal, knowing the air inside may have held its breath for eons, and knowing that our first breath in would shift it for good. And in that wait, Lake Vostok turns a different sort of riddle. Not just what is in there, but what is the cost of finding out. The learning thoughts about Lake Vostok are stacked, careful and strangely poetic when you read twixt the lines. One shot is that the lake holds germ life, small germs or old life shaped to dark, chill and high press, maybe feeding on chemforce from the bedrock down low. On the top, life oft leans on sun to push the food line. But in sealed worlds like Mobile Cave, life can turn, building its sphere on chem life stead, turning stone bits and airs to food. If Lake Vostok has hot wet work, if heat and stone bits seep up through cracks in the crust, then the lake could have zones where chem turns fuel. Not warm like hot vents, but warm to last, active to hold small, lasting crowds. In that shape, the lake is no bare vault, but a slow burning lab where life lives on the orbs in near breath. A next shot is softer and in some ways even more spooky, that life is there but in form so small, so thin, that it leaves soul soft signs. A life sphere of hisses, cells floating in dark, changing slow, splitting rare, being on a tick scale that makes human watch feel rushed. And then there is the rough shot that the lake is near bare. Not for life could not be, but for the states are too harsh, too sealed, too lacking in needed force steps. In that form of the yarn, the lake is not a hid den, but a hid waste, a hint that wet soul is no vow. That livability tie is not just a list, but a soft tie twixt chem, force and tick. But e'en those shots have knots, for Lake Vostok is not full cut off from the ice above it. The ice sheet moves, it melts and refreezes at the meat. This means the lake may get inputs over time. Stone bits, dust, maybe e'en germs from the ice itself. If that is true, then the lake could be both old and softly fresh, sealed but not prime. And that leads to one of the most grabbing and jarring thoughts, that the lake could hold live things that are not just old lasters, but a blend. Some shaped o'er eons, some let in slow through wild ways, borne down like dust settling through a shut room. If life code signs truly throw back something real and not stain, then the ask turns more sharp. Are these germs truly born of the lake? Or are they guests from above, lasting in a spot they were ne'er meant to reach? And that doubt throws back the more wide dread of the plan itself. How do you know what you have found is real when the act of looking can make false signs? Lake Vostok makes learning in a deep thought spot. It is not just about drilling and drawing, it is about proof, about pure, about if we can e'er watch something prime sealed without shifting it. In Force Learn, there is a famed ache with gauge. How watch can shift a set. Lake Vostok feels like the life-learn orb form of that thought, a set so cut off that the first true watch might too be the first true stir. That is why some sages say the lake ought to become it like a pure spot, not in a ghost sense, but in a way sense. That way ought to be clean, small, carefully held, that the first touch ought to be less like a trek and more like a mend deed done with humbly. On they say waiting too long is its own sort of loss, that without drawing, without straight learn, the lake stays a fable in the learning brain. That craft will grow, steps will tighten, but the asks will stay untold, save one takes the risk of splitting the gate. And hanging o'er all of it is the same pull that Mobile Cave left. Are we finding or stopping? For in the case of Lake Vostok, stopping is not word, it is fact. A drill hole is a wound, a poke is a break, a drop of strange wet, one sole germ hitching a ride could sow a stain that can't be undone. Not in a spot where clean is past hope and cut off is the core part. The lake is a prisoner of ice, but it is too kept by it. And we are the sole threat that can go round that keep. There is too a dark ear, less spoke of skin to the riddle, one that lives in the brain for the facts are spare. What if the lake is not one plain bowl? What if it has parts, sub-bowls split by spines, nooks with different chem, different flow, different pasts? What if parts of it are air-rich from melt ice in, while other parts are still thick stone bit packed? A lake can be much spheres in one form. In on the top, deep lakes form strange and near climbs, skins that do not blend, deeps that turn their own still worlds. Neath ice, neath press, neath dark, those gaps could be grown. And if the lake has been steady for eons, then all steady step, heat, salt, could make nooks, small kingdoms, small isles of liveabil itai. This is the sort of shot that turns Lake Vostok a haunted map in the brain. Not just a hid lake, but a hid land. Still, each time the yarn seems set to give us a clear tell, it pulls back. For the most famed bit, the got strange life code, always comes with the star of doubt. The sense that draws Taken near the lake, our light lie stained by the varied tools used to reach them, that what looks like find could be art, that what looks like far life could be a print from the top, and in that pull, the yarn turns near past bare in its stillness. We are so near a sealed sphere that has waited for eons, and our hands hang in front of the lock. Some nights at Vostok stand, the gust blows so hard that the stand creaks. The sky turns a black bowl. The stars look near to bruise the brain, and neath the floor, neath the ice, neath the heft of times, a lake rests in full black. No sunrise, no moon glow, no waves touched by air, just wet held in place by press and tick. If there is life down there, it has ne'er known the sky. It has ne'er known sky. It has ne'er known the swift harm of a hunter brought from elsewhere. It has dwelt inside a shutmath, chem and chill, calm and last. And if there is no life down there, then the lake is still a log of wet itself, kept through times, unchanged by the mess that reshaped the top. Their way, it is a hid bit. And maybe that is what makes Lake Vostok feel so jarring. Not the vow of beasts, not the lure of learned dream, but the thought of a spot so old and so sealed that it is past the beat of the who-man sphere. A spot that does not need us, does not note us, does not care if we e'er grasp it. There is a pull when met with a riddle like this to see a grand show. A poke going down, lights cut ting through black wet, something stirring in the beam. But Lake Vostok does not give show. It gives hold back, it gives doubt, it gives a gate that might ne'er be split neat, and that is its last chilling power. For Lake Vostok does not end with a find, it ends with a wait, a drill hole stopped short, a task slowed by fear of stain. A sphere neath ice left mostly untouched, not for we cannot reach it, but for once we do, it will ne'er be sealed again. And so the lake waits as it has waited for eons, dark, pressed, calm, a hid sea on our own orb, telling us that at times the great est riddles are not the ones we fail to solve, but the ones we pick not to stir. And in the hush neath Antarctica, the ask hangs like breath on glass. If we at last split that gate, will we find an old web that made it without us? Or will we soul find the blink we changed it for good? Yarn 11, the dark zone of the sea Notes. Not all sealed spheres lie 'neath miles of ice. Some are nearer than we think, split not by drills and clean pokes, but by a plain step through jungle limestone, where the earth swift drops off. In Antarctica, the gate was frozen shut, and the fear was stain. What we might let in a sphere that has made it without us. In Mexico, the gate is already wide. The wet is clear, the mouth is sunlit, and still something down there feels like it does not want to be watched for too long. For 'neath the Yucatan Peninsula, there is a next hid land, one not carved by ice sheets, but by tick, rain and stone. A lattice of 'neath wet dens stretches 'neath towns, roads and old shrines, threading the land as one like a next nerve set. And at some points, that set breaks the top in prime rounds of blue-black wet. They are called sea notes. From above, some look welcome, bright pools wrapped in vines and white rock. So still, they seem set, but much a darker, older in mood, rimmed by sharp limestone-like broke fangs. The Maya told spots like these as splits to a next world, not as word, not as poet, but as a true rim. They had a name for the downsphere, Xibalba, and for eons they dealt the CE notes not as plain wells, but as pure mouths, spots where gifts could be sent to powers that dwelt 'neath the sphere. At times, those gifts were jade, spice fume, dark glass, pots. At times they were beasts, at times they were folk. When new past diggers began to look in the deeps, they found the yarn still waiting in the wet. Human bones, heads, gems, right things that had slipped from live palms and set tarred in silt. Proof that these were not just spots to drink, but spots to bargain with dry, with want, with sick, with fear. You go down slow and the sun above shrinks to a pale coin, shacking on the top like it can't pick if to stay. The jungle noise slips first, then even the thought of sky seems distant. Your lamp claims command, one pale shaft in an older gloom, showing limestone that appears sculpted by calm rather than might. Silt lifts in idle curls as you let breath out. Ahead, the rock widens to a broader room, and the ray catches forms that do not fit stone. A spread of light bones, half set in the base, a head turned some as if it rolled and paused in mid-mind. And next to it, something gleams in your lamp, too neat to be rock. A trim bit, a sleek bend, a sign of shaped stuff that ought not rest here save someone bore it. You hang, watchful not to roil the floor, and the hush feels planned. In that flash, it is no swim pool or den set. It is a drop, a gift spot, a note left in the black, aimed down. To grasp why sea notes are at all, you must see the Yucatan not as a ground of streams, but as a ground of want. Scarce top flows course here. The soil is wholly limestone, and rain does not bide above. It sinks, seeps, eats the rock grain by grain, through scores of eons forming voids. Long ere the dens filled, they were dry paths. Some shaped when sea steps were less, some cut by sour wet, slow lie spreading hair cracks to ways you could stride through. Then the sea climbed back. The dens swelled, and what was once a dry down sphere turned a wet one. In spots like Quintana Roo, the den sets can be vast. Leagues of ways, branching halls, low roofs, swift rooms that yawn like great halls. There are stone spikes and stone mounds kept neath the wet stuck mid-form, as if the den is holding breath. In some parts there are skins where sweet wet meets salt wet, building a gleam bound named a holocline. If you have ne'er spied one, it can seem like a heat dream under wet. A wavering veil that warps all past it, making your lamp a shaking smear. And that veil is where much yarns start. Dive folk speak of lost sense, e'en in dens they have trained for and drawn. They speak of the feel of step ping in a room that swift feels wrong, too still, too thick, as if sound self is drunk. They speak of their lamps gleaming off pale limestone and making the dream of stir. They speak of losing their sense of up and down. For in a den, pull does not feel as it does in wide wet. There is no rim. The roof and floor can look the same when the silt lifts. And then There are the notes that float through the dive crowd like hisses, shades, forms at the edge of the ray, the sense that someone is at your back in a path too slim for a next form, a face in the black that clears to naught once you peer straight at it. In the outside sphere, these sound like fire yarns. In the sea notes, they sound like warning, for the dark zone of the sea notes is not just black, it is not. It is a spot where wrong steps build still, where one fin push can wipe sight, where a lost guideline is no small rub, but a doom word, where fright is not grand, it is chem, self-move, a switch thrown by flesh when it sees there is no light way back to air. E'en trained and dive folk heed the cenotes the way you heed a gale. Not for you think the gale is wrath, but for you know the gale need not be wrath to slay you. And still the odd est part is that the sea notes can feel calm right up to the flash they do not. A dive soul may start in sun, birds call-ing high, June glee leaves breathing in damp gust. The wet so clear it seems like glass poured in stone. The first yards down are a drop to peace. The top noise fades. The sphere turns a soft, slow dream of spheres and light beams. You can lose for a blink that you step in a spot with no sky. Then the den mouth shows. At times it is a wide cleft, a curve, a great hall door. Else times it is a crack you slip through one side at a time. In the first room, your lamp shows limestone scallops and rough rims, calcite drapes, old signs of an old seabed. The floor may be dust with silt so fine it seems like ash. It is light to see why folk once held this was a spot twixt spheres. All of it feels kept, as if tick has been put neath glass. And more deep in, you start to meet things that do not fit the human mind's thought of a plain world. The hollow Klein, for one, can build the feel that the den self moves. Sweet wet and salt wet have not same dents, and when you pass through that rim your sight shakes, your float shifts, your lamp bends odd, bowing rays and breaking shades to bits. For a flash you can feel like you swim in a dream. It is light, threat in light, to read twist as form. There are two nooks where the den draws breath. In some sea noticets, dive folk have told finding air nooks, small rooms where the den roof lifts past the wet line, leaving a trapped dome of gas. At times, these nooks are known and drawn. At times they come by shock. The air can be stale, the roof black with soot from far-gone guests, or marked by stone streaks like old tears. In some spots, there are signs that folk once reached these rooms when the dens were dry. Footmarked stone stuck in calcite, old paths now drowned, the ghostland of a sphere that was ere the flood. But air nooks bear their own dread. They hint that the den has hid rooms that can't be seen from the main way. They hint that the set has spots where you can top without true leaving. And when you are deep down low, an air nook can feel less like save and more like a waiting room. A trick of safe inside a spot that still has the last word. So whence do the more strange yarns, shades, tones, feels of being watched true lie rise? One tell is blunt and flesh-wise. In dens load is set e'en when you feel calm. A dive soul runs air, tick, depth, line, float, lamp, silt, friend span, path. The brain runs still sums. Add nitrogen fog at depth, or black air build from strain and sight can warp. The mind starts filling gaps, shades turn shapes, a gleam of lamp turns a form. The most old bits of the brain, the bits that live through hunters, start scanning for threat in a spot where threat has no face. A next tell is world-made. Dens can make tricks with sound. In a slim way, e'en the smallest breath out can bounce back and come from a strange tilt, making you feel something breathes out next to you. In some rooms, wet stir makes a low hum or shake that is felt through the frame more than heard. Dive folk have told hearing soft knocks, at times just shifting rock, at times their own gear tapping stone grown by sound waves till it seems outside. The halocline, too, can act like a lens for the brain. When sight is warped, the mind tries to steady it by macking build. A Hu-man form is one of the light-est builds for the brain to make from bits, and in the black with a lamprey that cuts like a blade. The rims of stone can seem like sides, ribs, a bent head. And then there is the plain est, most fearsome shot, not ghost but folk. The sea noticets are vast, some ways meet parts that are scarce seen. Some have side paths that fade into tight holds. O'er years, dive folk have died in dens, and get back is not always possible. In some spots stays may ne'er be found, not for one hides them, but for the den is silt stirs, flows shift. Bones can be spread, stuck, lost past falls. The thought that you might swim through a space where someone else once knew too late that they could not find the way out is cause to haunt the brain with no ghosts at all. Still, the Maya yarn adds a next skin. For to them, the sea notes were not blind doom traps. They were picked, they were used, they were met with right aim. At Chichen Itza, the pure say note turned a core spot of gifts. In times of dry, the need to win rain turned wild, and wild need is oft what turns faith to deed. When past diggers and dive folk began to draw things from some cenotes, they found not soul worth, but Hu-man stays. Some bore marks that hinted harm, others fit with drown, others vague in the way bones oft are when tickers wipe the last facts. It is one thing to know in thought that rights were. It is a next to see standing at the rim, hearing the top of the wet far down, knowing that the black is no word. It is fact. It is chill and it gulps sound. In that frame, the shades told by dive folk take a different feel heft, not as proof of ghost, but as proof of how rote hangs in spots shaped by fright and awe. When a folk treats a place as a rim to the downsphere for eons, that thought turns part of the air. It turns a yarn the stone drinks. E'en if you do not hold it, you can feel it, like stepping in a great pray hall and softening your tone with no word. Still, there are notes that fight lightwave off, yarns of lamps seen deep in ways where no dive soul ought be. Swift chill spots that feel placed as if you crossed a hid rim. Undrawn mouths that seem to show in one dive and fade in a next, like the den shift self, though in truth it may be a blend of weak sight, changed tilts, and the way wet path can be soft warped by load. There are too the things of false mouths, a mind trap where dive folk under press grow sure they see a way out where none is. A bright air patch in the far, a spread in the rock, a hint of wide wet. In a den, hope can be as threat as fear. It can pull you off the guideline, it can make you trust your eyes stead of your train. And the sea notes with their glass clear in some parts and their swift white milk clouds in others are prime shape to play that mean trick. If you step back from the fright and view the sea notes as a learning riddle, they stay grand Ian with no ghosts. Some ways keep notes of sea step shifts caught in stone forms now neath wet. Some hold old beast stays, and in a few spots Hu-man marks from spans when the dens were dry, signs of move through a ground that is no more. The dens are two life fronts. In the dark zone, germ life can bloom in ways we scant grasp, feeding on mixed stone bits, building soft mats and films on rock. Life needs no sun here. It needs chem, it needs tick, it needs stead. And stead is what these dens give till we step in them. Each dive is a break. Each fin stroke stirs silt that may not set for hours. Each breath out adds spheres to roofs that have not heard breath in eons. The more deep jest is that we come to the sea notes to seek, to note, to solve. But the act of seeking is its own stir, just as it was in Lake Vostok. The gap is that in the sea notes the stir is seen. You can watch clear fall to haze at your back like a shut drape. So maybe the most haunting side of the sea notes is not that they might be vexed by shades, but that they are vexed by rims. They sit at the meat of land and fable, of learn and write, of the live sphere above and the old sphere down low. They are wild things that turned pure build. They are wet-filled dens that once were dry ways. They are charts that shift with each turn, each fall, each slow stone drip. And for the dive soul, they turn a spot where the new brain meets something older than it likes. The sense of being down low and neath wet at once in a space that does not care if you grasp it. For in the end, you need not hold with Xibalba to feel why it was dreamed. All you must do is see the ray of a dive lamp cut through black wet, hitting stone that has ne'er seen sun. The line in your hand is the sole thread back to air. The halocline gleams like a veil. The den drinks your spheres in hush. And somewhere in the ways, past your lamp, past your charts, past your trust, the knot goes on, branching to rooms none have named. In Antarctica, we feared what we might wake by splitting a gate. In the Yucatan, the gate has been wide for a score of eons. And the ask is softer now, but no less jarring when you go down in the dark zone of the sea no tess. Are you seeking a den? Or are you just drawing near the rim of something that has always been there, waiting calm, letting us think we are the ones finding it? Yarn 12, the cursed isle of Poveglia. Not all rims are found neath wet. Some are not hid by depth, but by nearness, by how light a riddle can sit next to the live sphere and still stay untouched. A den can be sealed by limestone and tick. A trench can be watched by press and black. Still there are spots on earth kept by something plainer and more strange. Name, a place folk do not step in, not for they can't, but for they ought not. And in the Venetian lagoon, where the wet is thin, where boats slide through mist like slow shades, there is an isle that has turned a sort of negative space on the chart. A blank in the midst of known ways, a tag spoke soft, then dropped as if tongue itself might stir what rests there. And Poveglia, from far it does not seem a curse. It seems a left piece of Ven ice, brick and leaf, a broke shape gainst silver wet. You are there in the slow draw, standing at the front as the lagoon sighs round you. You feel the motors shake through the deck, steady but low, as if he in the boat tries not to speak too loud. The air tastes of salt and weed, and then something thicker, damp stone, rust, old rot warmed by weak sun, on. The isle lifts from the wet like a wound, dark windows drunk by vines, brick rims soft by years of rain, a bell spire cutting a slim form in the pale sky. You watch the shoreline sharpen with each yard, and the town at your back thins to a far hush. The small est sounds grow near, the slap of wet against wood, a gull's cry that feels too close, the soft shake of something loose in the gust. You tell yourself, it is soul rot, soul sky, soul a left spot. But your flesh keeps hearing anyway, waiting for a who-man sound that ought not be here. But the nearer you float, the more the air shifts. The lagoon grows more still. The town's tunes and tones thin at your back. The air takes on that salt marsh smell of tide flats and weed, and then something older, damp stone, iron, rot, and you start to grasp why low calls still speak of screams. Not as a word trick, not as a guessed yarn, but as if the isle is a spot that recalls too well. Poveglia rests twixt Ven ice and the lee dew, small to cross by soul. Near that it seems past chance for it to be strange. And still for eons it has been dealt like a banish, not just left, shunned, for Poveglia's past is no one neat loss you can note and put off. It is a stacked heap of who man fear, sick, lone, and rule mean packed in one patch of soil. It starts like much Venetian yarns do with wet and trade. Ven ice was a town built on touch, ships landing from all spots, stalls filled with strange cloth and spice, sail folk bearing news from ports most folk would ne'er see. That set trade made Ven ice rich. It too made it weak. Sick went the same ways as trade, and in the mid-age sphere, plague was no mere ill. It was a life dread. It came with no word, moved through kin like smoke, and left behind bod eyes in sums that beat the brain's might to hold. By the time folk began to grasp that cutting off the sick could slow doom, Ven ice turned one of the first spots to shape qua and tine. The word self is tied to the Venetian way. The thought of twice-score days set by to wait to see where the faveur would rise, where the signs would show. And Venice needed spots to put folk, not just the sick, but the thought-sick. Not just those with sores and black skin, but those who had been near them. Those who had come from a ship that had been to the wrong port. Those whose hack sounded wrong, in a town where fear could spread as fast as ill. Poveglia turned one such spot. A quarantine isle, a hold pen for doubt. See what that means in human terms, being ta'en from your home while the bells toll and the streams move with boats full of hush. Being fed through wet, you have crossed scores of times for plain ends. Work, kin, feast, soul now the same wet has turned a rim. The skyline of Venice is still seen, near to make your part feel mean, lie sharp. You can see the town that is still live while you are set someplace the live do not go. The quar and tine builds were not made for ease. They were made for hold. Poveglia's builds, parts of which still stand, were use, blocky, meant to house flesh, not lives. Rooms for watch, spots to part the sick from the just touched, zones for fume wash, for burning garb, for holding the things that might bear unseen death, and if the sick grew worse, they did not go back. They stayed, they died. The lagoon does something odd to human grief. It keeps and wipes at once. Wet slows rot, but it too bears things off. Through eons, the yarn turns both more firm and more ghost. There were bodies, there were fires, there were mass graves. Still the true sums blur, the notes grow spare, and fable fills the gaps that Parpur leaves. This is where the local claim starts to form its dark song, that the soil of Poveglia is not full soil, that it is ash, that so much flesh was burnt here, so much human stuff ground to dust that the ground self turned a waste of plague. If the part is true or sign, the thought clings to the spot for it feels heart true. On Poveglia, the earth is not just earth, it is a log. It is a skin of what came when Venice tried to save itself by throwing folk on an isle and waiting for fate to pick. But Poveglia did not stay sole a plague isle. That would have been cause. It turned something else in the 20th age, when folk had new ways to part the UN sort. When the dread was not soul sick, but the wild mind. When the cure for pain was oft lock, and the line twixt care and harm was slim to fade. A mind-house was set on Poveglia. A next hall past walls. A next cause for boats to land with folk who did not pick to be there. And in the folk retells, this is the point where the isle's yarn turns from past dread to something that feels near ghost set. A spot already soaked with death, now tacking the live, who were already seen as lost. Mind homes in their best forms were meant to be hold, built care, safe, a calmer sphere. But the past of mind halls through lands, most in the time ere new men's, is too the past of crowd, harsh hold, test steps, and a sort of still harm called cure. Poveglia's mind home turned in the new brain a thick sign of that harm. There are yarns, some set in mouth-rote, some shaped by late spell, of screams heard at night, of those kept in rooms where the damp ne'er left the walls, of healers who dealt the isle as a test room, of ways once seen as help and now seen as harsh. And then there is the most set tale that a healer driven wild by the isle self climbed the bell spire and fell. At times the yarn says he jumped. At times it says he was pushed. At times it says he heard tones come from the walls, tones of those who died here eons past and could not bear them. It is the sort of yarn that grows on its own in a spot like Poveglia, for it gives a tale shape. The isle eats all at last, e'en those who think they hold might o'er it. But the true riddle is not if one tale bit is right. The true riddle is why Poveglia pulls these yarns the way a stone pulls pins. Why the isle seems to birth a folk field round itself, as if the human mind faced with that much stacked pain can't help but make ghosts. And maybe it is, for Poveglia is not just a site of death, it is a site of part. In the sea notice, the rim is real, rock and wet, a drop in a world where our forms were ne'er meant to be. Lost sense can be told by black, by the brain's pull to fill voids with sense. On Poveglia, the rim is folk. It is made by fear, fear of catch, fear of spread, fear of minds that can't be guessed. And fear has its own build. Quarantine is a build, so is a mind home. Both are built on the thought that some folk must be put elsewhere for the safe of all else. That elsewhere turns a soul waste heap, a spot where the town puts what it does not want to see, while still leaning on that spot to stay steadwhy. If you stand in Venice at sunfall, you can watch the lagoon glow with that soft gold-pink light that turns wet to steel. Boats move like slow bugs, laugh bears from food halls. And some, where out in that same wet Poveglia rests in hush, a dark seam in the love. That gap is part of the curse. For it hints something jarring, that the most grim spots are not always far off. At times they are next door, hid in plain view, fed by shared nod, not to peer too close, and folk do not peer too close. Poveglia has long been held back, and for years it has been dealt as off bounds. Its rotting build seen as not sound, its own and way not ted, its name thick to act as a next fence. E'en when want to know lifts, as it always does, most guests keep their span. The isle is no sleek wreck kept for tour. It is no stone with guidewalks and bright signs. It is a spot where the vines have claimed the windows, where the brickwork falls in self, where the lagoon gust hisses through bare halls and bareness does something to sound. On wet, sound moves strange. A yell can feel nearer than it is. A far splash can seem close. The human brain hearing bits builds a full shot, fills lost parts with dreamed shape. On Poveglia, the sound ways of leave turn part of the yarn. Folk speak of steps that match their own, of tones that bear no words, soul the form of fear, of a bell that ought not ring any more, and still on some nights seems to speak. A doubter can give tells. Loose steel shifting in gust, wet slapping a wall, birds crying in the reeds. The brain primed by yarn reads plain noise wrong. This is not wild, this is human. In a spot with a name for death, the brain scans for threat. And when it finds fog, it clears it to something with sense. But the doubter must too face a next truth. The isle's past is no fog. Folk were ta'en here, folk died here, folk were locked here. No ghost is needed to make that fear. And still something about Poveglia makes e'en the clear brain pause, for the isle stands for a sort of soul haunt. It asks or ask we scarce ask straight. What do we do with the folk we fear? In the plague years, fear was flesh. In the mind-home years, fear was brain. In both cases, the fix was span. Put them on an isle, and when the isle was no more needed, it was left, like a tool put back in a shelf, the shelf shut. The town went on, but shelves do not wipe what was in them. Through tick, Poveglia turns more than a spot. It turns a sign, a hint that step on is not just the build of art and hoard, but too the make of hid rooms where pain is stored. The Venetian lagoon, with its love and its gleaming light, turns a stage where one isle plays the part of all the town would rather lose. This is why the curse feels sound to folk. Not for they hold in mag-ick of need, but for they sense that spots can drink human deed, that walls hold rote, not as true logs, but as prints. The same halls strode by the sick are strode again by the locked. The same windows that once watched boats land with plague flags, latter watched care folk and healers come and go. The same air, the same damp, the same salt-soaked gust pushing in stone. In if you take the folk, the shape of the yarn stays, and in that shape the brain finds its step. Some thoughts try to tell Poveglia's name in soul-world terms. The lagoon's damp, the mould, the rot, all of it can build a sense of dread that is real, not ghost. Some smells are known to stir fear, for they hint rot or stain. The soundscape of a left aisle, gust through broke gates, wet gainst stone, the swift burst of birds can copy the hints our brains tie to threat. Other thoughts look at the brain of banned spots. When something is named off bounds, it turns charged. The brain waits for something past the rim, and hope is a strong moulder of sight. Folk who step in by wrong oft do so with high blood, note tools in hand, hearts all read-eye fast. In that state, plain fields grow loud. A shade turns a form, a creek turns a step. And then there is the dark air, more who man thought that Poveglia feels vexed for halls like quarantine stands, and mined homes were in much ways spots where tones were not heard. Pain came past gates that folk did not split, that makes a folk ghost, a sound, a sense that there are yarns that ne'er had eyes, ne'er had end. In that sense, the screams folk speak of are not ghost at all, they are past. They are the screams that were real once and were not met. The isle's most haunting part may not be one build, but the way it rests in tie to Ven ice itself. It is a glass, held at a soft tilt. It shows a form of the town that the town does not show. Ven ice is love, awe, art, boats, tune. Poveglia is the groundwork of fear, the need shade. And the shade, once seen, is hard to unsee. If you let your brain hang there, you start to see the lagoon as a sort of bloodstream. Boats like cells shifting goods and folk, Ven ice as a live thing, and Poveglia as a clean node. Sieving, parting, catching what threats the whole. In life learn that clean is wild. In who man-folk it bears soul heft. It hints that last at times asks, give, but give leaves waste. So what stays on Poveglia now? Wreck shore. Breaking wards, bare rooms, a bell spire that still stands like a hand raised to the sky. Trees and brush growing through brick, as if wild tries to stitch the aisle shut. But too hush and hush is ne'er blank in a spot like this. Hush is a call. It makes the brain give what it can't hear. It makes the guest ask if lack is true, lack or soul the weight, twixt ghosts. There are those who swear that Poveglia is just a rotting isle with a grim past, no else from much land spots marked by grief, and in a soul-some sense, that may be true. The sphere is full of spots built on pain. But Poveglia feels else, for it is small, held, wrapped by wet, like a test in cut-off. For the yarns here do not fit one time, they fit a loop. For the isle was used, left, and then used once more for a different sort of human qua and teen. And for it is still near to see the lamps of Venice at night, as if the live sphere is always there, always watching from past the wet, still ne'er crossing. And that is what makes the last thought so jarring. In the sea notes, we asked if something old was waiting neath a wide gate, calm letting us think we were the ones finding it. On Poveglia, the gate was ne'er meant for find. It was meant for take, for loss. The isle is a spot we made to hold what we could not face, and then we left it there sealed by span and hearsay. So the ask is not soul if Poveglia is vexed. The ask is what it means when a spot turns vexed by plan, when a whole folk nods still that some pain ought have penned someplace else. And if you stand at the rim of the lagoon peering toward that dark-grown shape, you might feel something that has naught to do with ghosts and all to do with seeing. For Poveglia needs not reach out to you. It needs not draw you in. Its soul needs to be still, near to tell you that the most fearsome riddles are not always hid at the base of the sea. At times they are on the top in plain view, waiting like an isle that has already heard each scream it will e'er hear, and still has room for more. The sphere is packed with spots that ought not still feel untold, and still they do. Some are sealed neath miles of ice, some are carved in stone deep neath our souls, some are gulped by woods, wastes and seas that will not give back what they take. And the spots we have walked through this day are sole a part of what stays strange. Vaults that bide shut, streams that slip, dens that breathe poison, shipwrecks kept like signs, and deeps so harsh that e'en our best tools feel like stabs. But the odd part is this: the more we learn these spots, the less sure we turn. Each trek leaves past gauge and new riddles. Each thought tells one bit and lifts three more asks. And at times the most jarring shot is not that we lack the tells yet. It is that some spots were ne'er meant to give them. If you like this walk through true strange spots that learning still can't full tell, be sure to join and check our author tale films for more yarns waiting in the black. Neath the ground, neath the wet, and just past the rims of what we think we grasp. Thanks for watching, and as always, till next time, bide safe.